Still pulling it up. All right, you are live streamed.
Very good, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jim Dill, and I'm the Senate Chair of the ACF Committee, and this morning we're going to have a briefing. So I'm going to turn it right over to begin with my co-chair for introductions and to move into our program. Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. My name is Maggie O'Neill, and I represent House District 15, which is in Saco. I think we should start out with some intros of committee members. So I'll turn to the first person I see, who is Senator Black, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Black, representing Senate District 17, which is all of Franklin County and 4 towns in Quebec.
Thank you. Senator Dill, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Jim Dill. I represent Senate District 5, which is Northern Penobscot County.
Thank you. Senator Maxman?
I am Chloe Maxman. I represent Senate District 13, which is all of Lincoln County, minus Dresden, plus Washington and Windsor.
Thanks. Representative Bernard, please.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Sue Bernard, and I represent Caribou, Westmanland, and New Sweden.
Thank you. Representative Osher, please.
I am Representative Lori Osher, and I represent most of Orono.
Thank you. Representative McCray, please.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Dave McCray. I live in Fort Fairfield, and just once in a great while I list these out. I represent good people of Southeast Prescal, Easton, Fort Fairfield, Limestone, Caswell, Hamlin, Sear Plantation, Connor, and offshoot of Stockholm up in the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Pluker, please.
Thank you. I am Bill Pluker. I represent Warren, Hope, Appleton, and part of Union, House District 95.
Thank you. Representative Schofield, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair and everyone. My name is Tom Schofield, and I represent House District 112. I live in the town of Weld and home to Mount Blue State Park. And I represent 17 towns and townships in Franklin and Somerset counties, the High Peaks region of Maine. Good morning.
Thank you. All right, that looks like everybody that I can see. So just to kick things off, we had requested to have the department come and give an update on the work that the Climate Council has been doing. The report and recommendations came out in December, and I wanted to make sure that we had an update as the committee that handles ag and forestry, working land kind of issues. So I see folks from the department here. I don't have a full list of who will be appearing, so I'm just going to ask that.
I sent you a list.
Thanks, Cheryl. The list I got was for bills. So I'll just invite folks to come up and introduce themselves in the order of your choosing, and we'll be here to listen. Thank you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Representative O'Neill, Senator Dill, and all members of the committee. My name is Amanda Beal, and I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. And we are really happy to be here today. We really appreciate the opportunity to give you a briefing on the work of the Maine Climate Council, how it relates to our work at the department, and what steps we are taking to implement the state's recently finalized climate action plan. I'm going to give a bit of an intro, and then you'll be hearing from some others as we go along. So as I'm sure you can all appreciate, when considering the breadth of our responsibilities at the department, climate change touches upon and impacts virtually all of our work, from our public lands, parks, and beaches, to the health of our forests, to our farms, The instability of a changing climate threatens the health of these ecosystems and elevates the financial risk for those who rely upon our natural resource base to make a living. Also, considering that our agricultural, forest, and conservation lands represent areas of significant economic impact for our state overall, it's important that we take the threats of climate change very seriously. And at the same time, these resources also provide significant ecosystem services to our state and are both threatened by climate change and are one of the greatest assets we have for effective mitigation. And because the Climate Council's work is so related to ours, a number of DACF staff have been involved in the council and/or its working groups, either as co-chairs, members, or support staff. In addition, we have a work group within DACF that has been in place since the Maine Climate Council was established, that has been informing our involvement with the council's work and working to inventory our programs and capacity to engage in implementation. Also, since the plan was finalized, a group of our staff representing our all 4 natural resource agencies, DACF, DMR, IF&W, and DEP, have been working to identify cross-cutting strategies that we can work together on. And to date, they've identified approximately 20 strategies that fall into this category. The work of both of these internal groups is still underway, so we're not prepared to present on any concrete outcomes of their efforts here today, but we would welcome the opportunity to come back at a later date to do so. So our planned agenda for the rest of the morning, or the time that we have here, will include a brief overview of the Maine Climate Council's work, the process undertaken to develop the Climate Action Plan, and next steps for the Council. And on that, you'll be hearing from Sarah Curran from the Governor's Office on Policy Innovation and the Future. After that, Judy East, who's the director of the Land Use Planning Commission, and myself will be talking about some of the overarching strategies in the plan that are most relevant to our department's work. And I should say that Judy and I both hold seats on the Maine Climate Council, and we both each co-chair one of the working groups, Judy with the Community Resilience Planning, Emergency Management, and Public Health working group, and I co-chair the Natural and Working Lands work group. And then you're going to hear from each of our 4 bureau directors about some of the work that is underway or in the planning stages to implement recommendations from the plan as they relate to their bureaus. And we also hope to leave some time for questions and answers. But as I said, we also would welcome the opportunity to come back for a longer conversation once we've had a chance to really complete the work of mapping out our approach to implementing all relevant strategies. So with that, if it's okay, Representative O'Neill, I'd like to turn it over to Sarah Curran to walk us through the Maine Climate Council.
Absolutely. Thanks, Commissioner Beal.
Good morning. I'm just going to share screen here so you can see the slides that I've prepared. And there we go. That's not quite what I want. There, can you all see the slides? Perfect. Good morning, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Curran, and I work in the Governor's Office of Policy Innovation in the Future as a senior analyst. Thank you for inviting me here today. I'm here this morning to talk about Maine Won't Wait, the state's 4-year action plan to tackle climate change. And as Commissioner Beal described, I'll talk a little bit about the process to develop the plan, the big picture strategies that were recommended, and next steps for the Climate Council. On June 26, Governor Mills and the legislature created the Maine Climate Council to develop a 4-year plan to reduce Maine's greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to the impacts of climate change. By statute, the plan must put the state on a trajectory to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 45% by 2030 and at least 80% by 2050. By executive order, the state must also achieve carbon neutrality by 2045. And the plan also needs to include strategies to help Maine people, communities, and businesses become more resilient to the impacts of climate change. According to the DEP, 3/4 of Maine's greenhouse gas emissions are from our transportation and building sectors. And in a moment, you'll see that a number of the strategies proposed to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions rely on reducing reliance on combustion of fossil fuels through energy efficiency and weatherization, and by electrifying our transportation and building sectors. The council and its 6 working groups and a science and technical subcommittee included more than 200 Maine people with diverse experiences and backgrounds to develop the climate action plan. Between October 2019 and June 2020, the 6 working groups of the council met monthly, sometimes more often, to develop draft recommendations for the Climate Council to consider. And the science and technical subcommittee developed a summary of climate change impact in Maine. In the fall of last year, the Climate Council considered the strategies that were presented by the working groups in the context of a number of scientific and technical reports, and selected the final strategies for inclusion in the Climate Action Plan. As part of the plan, a new equity subcommittee has also been created that will support planning and implementation of Maine's climate strategies to ensure benefits across diverse populations of Maine people. The work of the Climate Council was informed by several scientific and technical reports that I want to highlight briefly. The Scientific and Technical Subcommittee of the Maine Climate Council was charged with providing a summary of the impacts of climate change in Maine, as well as some specific projections, such as estimates of relative sea level rise. We also engaged a consultant to provide an economic analysis and greenhouse gas modeling, and they analyzed the draft strategies from the working groups. In addition, they produced vulnerability maps that describe some of the major impacts of climate change across the state, and they also did a cost of doing nothing study for us. We worked with the University of Maine's Mitchell Center to do an equity analyzation of the draft strategies proposed by the working groups. And what they did is they looked at each proposed strategy and tried to understand how it would impact vulnerable populations and make recommendations for how it could be improved from an equity perspective. Finally, my office worked with the Governor's Energy Office to develop a plan for the advancement of Maine's clean energy economy. And the plan highlights the economic opportunity for the state in sectors like renewable energy and energy efficiency. And all of these reports are available at the website climatecouncil.maine.org. On December 1st, 2020, the Maine Climate Council presented their final climate action plan to Governor Mills and the legislature. And the plan includes 4 goals. The first is to reduce Maine's greenhouse gas emissions. The second is to make Maine more resilient to the impacts of climate change, to foster economic opportunity and prosperity, and to advance equity through Maine's climate response. I'm going to go briefly through the 8 primary strategies of Maine Won't Wait that tackle both lowering our greenhouse gas emissions and improving our resilience to the impacts of climate change. Strategy A, embrace the future of transportation in Maine. Transportation is responsible for 54% of Maine's greenhouse gas emissions, and this strategy includes actions to accelerate Maine's transition to electric vehicles and to reduce vehicle miles traveled with increased access to broadband, improved land use policies, and improved public transportation. Strategy B, modernize Maine's buildings. Heating, cooling, and lighting of buildings is responsible for 30% of Maine's greenhouse gas emissions, and this strategy calls for expanding the number of heat pumps installed in Maine homes, doubling home weatherization rates, advancing the design and construction of new buildings, and promoting climate-friendly building products, especially those made from Maine forest products. It also includes the opportunity for the state to lead by example in publicly funded buildings. Strategy C, reduce carbon emissions in Maine's energy and industrial sectors, focuses on transitioning to clean power to curb greenhouse gas emissions. This means ensuring an adequate, affordable, clean energy supply to achieve by 2030 an electricity grid where 80% of Maine's usage comes from renewable generation and 100% by 2050. Strategy D, grow Maine's clean energy economy and good jobs. Transitioning to cleaner energy generation and energy efficiency offers exciting new economic opportunity, and the plan details climate action steps to create economic opportunities such as encouraging the growth of the clean energy economy, creating incentives for consumers, businesses, and industries to invest in energy efficiency, and supporting innovative construction materials and local agricultural systems that support Maine forest products, farms, and the fishing and aquaculture industry to build and feed the state into the future. Strategy E, protect Maine's environment and working lands and waters and promote natural climate solutions, highlights the powerful role that Commissioner Beal referenced earlier of Maine's natural and working lands and waters to sequester carbon emissions as part of a solution to meet Maine's nation-leading carbon neutrality goal. A major outcome of the plan is that 30% of Maine's lands are in conservation easements or protected by 2030, including protection of working farmlands and forest land to keep them working. Strategy F, build healthy and resilient communities, emphasizes the need to provide support for communities so they can be proactive about understanding, planning for, and acting to reduce their risk from climate change. And Strategy D, invest in climate-ready infrastructure, is focused on investing in improvements to make our infrastructure, such as our bridges and roads and other critical infrastructure, more resilient to the impacts of climate change. One outcome is to incorporate sea level rise projections into Maine's regulatory framework. Finally, Strategy H is focused on communication and engaging with Maine people about climate impacts and program opportunities. We believe that effective communication will be critical to the success of the climate action plan. And this strategy includes highlighting leadership and climate innovation so people can better understand the challenges and the opportunities, as well as helping Maine students to better understand the science of Maine's climate and be prepared with skills to meet future workforce opportunities. In terms of next steps, the plan was delivered on December 1st, and moving forward, the Maine Climate Council and the working groups and subcommittees will meet to monitor the implementation of the climate action plan, with the Maine Climate Council meeting quarterly and the working groups meeting at least twice per year. And the climate plan is to be updated every 4 years. So the next update is due in 2024. Thank you, and I'll turn it now over to Judy East. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Do I see any questions from committee members? All right, oh, I see one from Representative Schofield.
Thank you, Representative O'Neill. I'm very impressed with the conciseness and the diversity. Oh, sorry. Okay. There, is that better? I apologize. Thank you. I'm impressed with the complexity of this whole thing, and a lot of work has gone into it, and I'm sure much more will occur over the following months and years. But one of the things I found interesting, and I just wanted to ask if anybody, where it is on the table, and I think all forms of energy supplementation should be on the table. That's my view. Where does and what kind of conversations have there been about nuclear energy? Or is it just not discussed at all? I'd just like to have that answered, just if you could, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Representative. That's a great question. We had an energy working group that was co-chaired by Dan Burgess, the director of the Governor's Energy Office, that really focused on the sources of energy and how to transform Maine's electricity grid to meet the challenges of climate. I am not sure if they discussed nuclear or not, so I would have to get back to you on that, but I'm happy to do so.
All right, thank you. I saw a hand from Representative McCray. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes, just very quickly. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Corn, for being here this morning. Right at the very last slide, I was writing down the contact address, and I looked up from the first word climate, and it was gone. Can you repeat that or show us that?
Absolutely. I can do both of those things. It's climatecouncil.maine.gov,
Maine spelled out.
Maine spelled out.
Okay, great. That'll do it.
Thank you.
That was easy. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Do I see any other questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you for your
Thank you.
presentation. And I'll turn it over to Director East.
Actually, I think I'm going to go before Judy, and first I'm going to share my screen if all goes well. I think. Okay. Can you all see my slide? Great. I love it when things go as planned. Great. So at this point, Judy and I are going to just run through, I think quickly, because I know time is ticking here and I want to get to our bureau directors, but just to run through some of the strategies that relate to our department. And so as you heard, Sarah, she walked through all of these strategies at sort of a high level. And I think, you know, we could say that there's work for us maybe in every single one of these strategies, but we've identified the ones that we think have the most direct or most directly intersect with the work that we're doing as a department. And so we've highlighted those as strategies D through H. And I'll talk about each one in just a little bit more detail. So the first one, D, strategy D, grow Maine's clean energy economy and protect our natural resource industries. These are a couple of examples from the Climate Action Plan of goals that are embedded in the plan that are, of course, related to our work. One being growing Maine's forest products industry through bioproducts innovation, supporting economic growth and sustainable forest management, and preservation of working lands. And of course, this intersects with our work through the Maine Forest Service, and as well as a position we have in the department. We have a director of natural resource markets and economic development who works very closely with DECD. Also, you'll see here, there's a goal to increase the amount of food consumed in Maine up to 30% by 2030. We're actually already working toward a goal similar to this. You might recall that there was a bill that passed previously that directed the department to be working on increasing in-state procurement of food for institutions and the state to get to 20% by 2025. So that is something that we are already actively working on. Next, under strategy E, protect Maine's environment and working lands and waters. There are a few different goals here, increasing the total acreage of conserved lands in the state through voluntary focused purchases of land and working forest or farm conservation easements. So a few different ways that we can be working on that goal. And of course, we already do work on that in some ways directly with the LMF program. And all of our bureaus, oops, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to change the screen. All of our bureaus have a role to play there. And also to focus conservation on high biodiversity areas. And also this last point here, I'm sorry, I'm having my window of where everyone is keeps moving around on me, so it's blocking parts of my screen. Develop policies by 2022 to ensure renewable energy project siting is streamlined and transparent and minimizing the impact on our natural and working lands. There is a work group that is going to be formed to actually discuss and come forth with some recommendations to the committee in the future on that. Also, still in E, develop new incentives to increase carbon storage. So this first bullet here, establish a stakeholder process to develop a voluntary incentive-based forest carbon program for smaller woodland owners. You may recall that maybe a month or so ago, the governor signed an executive order establishing this task force. I am a co-chair of the task force along with Tom Abello from the governor's office. And we have had our first meeting. We have a great group of members who represent state agencies, NGOs, the university, landowners, forest products industry, including loggers and foresters. So yes, we've had our first meeting. Our next meeting actually is this Friday. It's open to the public to view. If you'd like information about that, we can certainly get that to you. And also to increase the amount of financial incentives for climate-friendly land management practices that sequester carbon and support climate change resilience. And then we're still under E, expand outreach to offer information, technical assistance. So it's important to make sure that we have the service provider capacity to be doing the kind of technical assistance work that is needed with all of our different stakeholders. And of course, to improve monitoring and understanding and managing our response. We need to be able to measure and know that what we're doing is having the impact that we want it to. And the next slide, actually, I think at this point, I turn it over to Judy.
Thank you, Commissioner Beal, and good morning, everybody. I'll be talking about the ways that the department will be engaging in implementation on building healthy and resilient communities. One of under strategy F, there are 3 implementation measures. The first being this empowering of local and regional efforts. There is a strong need for leadership for robust technical assistance at the state level and funding at the state level and at the local and regional levels. You'll note that it says by 2024. And that time frame is very much in recognition of the current budget and economic realities we face. So there is a need for greater assistance and greater funding, but that's going to take a little time. The second implementation measure here of adoption of official sea level rise projections is current, and there is a bill before the legislature that DEP is sponsoring. It might be the governor's bill, I can't remember, but in any event, it's in front of you to incorporate the official sea level rise projections from the Science and Technical Committee report. And that's to bring them into the regulations and statutes so that they are based in science and also can be updated as the science changes over time. Next slide, please, Commissioner. The third implementation measure under this overall objective to build resilient communities has to do with the legal statutes and regulatory tools to emphasize resilience. And this essentially touches every law and statute on the books that affects land and water. Our committee, the Community Resilience Planning, Emergency Management, Public Health Working Group, started this process. But again, you'll notice the time frame out to 2024. There's a great deal of complexity here, and it's going to take some time, and it will certainly take convening the stakeholders who are affected, have expertise, and so on. These are some of the most controversial regulations affecting the regulated community. They're also the point at which we can make a clear difference in improving resilience across the whole spectrum of statutes and rules. It affects siting, land use, risk reduction, and also anticipating growth in growth centers. Next slide, please. So under invest in climate ready infrastructure, this is the primary recommendation of the emergency management subgroup, if you will, of the larger group of resilience, public health, emergency management. And this is an effort to increase both our ability to understand, that is, assess our vulnerabilities. It's partly done, it needs to be completed. Develop the design guidance needed to act upon it, and then have some money within the state to leverage bringing federal funds to the table. And so that's what the Infrastructure Adaptation Fund is all about. It will be part of the governor's bond proposal, and almost any of the significant vulnerabilities that we face with critical infrastructure, roads, bridges, wastewater treatment plants, are very large ticket items. And so having state match for those 10 to 25% requirements in order to bring federal funds to the table is a really critical recommendation, and that'll be in the works as one of the first recommendations. So with that, I'll pass the baton back to Commissioner Beal for the last strategy.
Thank you, Judy. So yes, under H, engage with Maine people and communities. The first bullet is about, communicating the goals of the climate action plan and helping people to understand how they can, be part of that work. And so, we have a role to help with that and communicating to our stakeholders. And then the next bullet is just around workforce and training, job growth opportunities, and particularly in the clean energy industries. And just to, expand on that a little bit, as there's greater adoption of renewable energy technology, it's even possible that these kinds of skills would be needed within our agriculture and forestry industries, for example. So there's a connection there. And so at this point in time, I would like to, if it's okay to keep going, we're just going to give each bureau director a few minutes to talk about work specific to their particular area. And so we'll start with Andy Cutco with the Bureau of Parks and Lands.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, everyone. For the Bureau of Parks and Lands, I'm going to focus on the role of our state-owned forest lands in climate change mitigation and adaptation. As most of you should recall from your 9th grade science, forests are essentially huge sponges for carbon in the atmosphere, and they absorb carbon dioxide and pump out oxygen. Maine is the most forested state in the country at about 89%. So the state actually has a really big role to play in this area. And I think Patty Cormier from the Maine Forest Service is going to talk a little bit more about that role in just a while. Next slide, please. For those who are new to the committee, this map gives a brief overview of lands managed by the Bureau of Parks and Lands. Between our state parks and public lands, the department owns more than 700,000 acres of land. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the size of Kennebec County, or about 3 times the size of Baxter State Park. As you can see from the map here, most of our public lands are in the northern, western, or down east parts of Maine. Most of our state parks are actually in southern and coastal Maine and don't actually show up all that well at this scale. Next slide. About 70% of the land that we own is managed forest land where we harvest timber. And the Namacanta unit, which is shown here south of Millinocket, is a good example of one of our larger public land units. It's about 40,000 acres, or roughly the size of 2 townships surrounding Namacanta Lake, which happens to be one of my favorite spots in Maine. And it's bisected by the Appalachian Trail. So as you can see here on the map, everything south and west of Namacanta Lake is managed forest land, where we harvest timber. The area northeast of the lake is an ecological reserve.
Hi, this is Joseph Underwood.
Hello. Okay, it sounds like Representative Underwood has joined us. Thank you. I'm just talking about the map of Namacanta Lake. To the northeast is ecological reserve, which is open to hiking, fishing, and hunting, but off limits to timber harvesting. Ecological reserves were authorized by the legislature about 20 years ago to be set aside for habitat protection and as benchmarks for long-term research, and there are about 100,000 acres of ecological reserves on BPL ownership. So next slide here. When the reserves were set aside about 20 years ago, it was primarily for habitat reasons at that time. But what we've come to learn in the last several years is really how important unmanaged forests are for storing carbon. We recently worked with the University of Maine on a study to actually quantify the amount of carbon stored and sequestered in ecological reserves. And as you can see here, these are a couple of the quick results. One is that the reserves store 30% more carbon than Maine's managed forests on a per acre basis. And every year they sequester about 35,000 metric tons of carbon, which is roughly the equivalent of about 7,500 cars. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the majority of our land is actually sustainably managed forest land, and there are a number of considerations that come into play there. Certainly, we're looking at carbon sequestration on our managed lands as well. We don't have an academic study, but if we know that growth generally exceeds harvest, which is the case for our public lands, then we know that sequestration is occurring. And we also know that carbon sequestration is occurring in a number of our long-lasting timber products that are produced from our woodlands. We also know that resilient forests are more appropriate in a time of climate change, and so we are managing for diverse tree species and age classes so that our forests can better withstand extreme wind events, storm events, insect outbreaks, et cetera. And planning and preparation in looking at forest roads in particular in extreme weather as we think about hydrology changing and more extreme flooding events. We just held a training a couple weeks ago for all of our foresters from the Fish and Wildlife Department and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on what's called stream smart water crossings to make sure that we're accommodating habitat connectivity in the aquatic realm. And then lastly, we've had a number of really productive internal discussions towards this goal of conserving 30% of Maine's natural and working lands. A lot more to be discussed there, but we've at least had initiated those conversations. So with that, I will conclude with the Bureau of Parks and Lands, and we'll go to our next Bureau Director.
Great, thank you, Andy. Next up, we have Patty Cormier, who's the Director of the Maine Forest Service, or the Bureau of Forestry, as we also refer to it.
Thank you, Commissioner, and good to see everybody this morning. Patty Cormier, Director of the Maine Forest Service. And Commissioner, if we could see the next slide. So just wanted to, working on what Andy said, look at a snapshot of our Maine forests. So 23 billion trees, over 1 inch in diameter, representing 50 tree species. The sound tree volume has increased over 1 billion cubic feet from 2013 to 2018. Our forests contain 2,071 million metric tons of carbon, and the rate of growth to removal is 1.4 to 1. And we are losing an estimated 23 acres a day to conversion to other uses. And then the bottom right, you can see the profile of the forest structure. So 32% is in pole size, 36% is in seedling sapling, and 32% is in medium pole timber. Next slide, please. And just wanted, with respect to climate change, wanted to cover what the Forest Service is currently doing and have been doing for many years. So Maine cannot preserve its working forest space without mechanisms to deliver quality technical assistance, information, and education to forest landowners, loggers, and foresters. 23% of Maine's 17.6 million acres of forest lands are owned by small wood landowners, largely in southern and central Maine. Over 90% own 100 acres or less. One of the, that is the keystone across all 3 divisions of the Maine Forest Service, is technical assistance. And that includes, Andy references, natural resource training. We're finding, with respect to hydrology, training in BMPs, we've ramped up, working with partner organizations. We're seeing that culvert sizes are 25% to 30% too small now due to the hydrology events we're having now. So working with municipalities and landowners of all sizes to address that. Of course, forest health, we're dealing with invasive plants and insects, and workshops, our entomologists, pathologists working with folks throughout the state how to mitigate the effects. And urban forestry, encouraging proactive efforts at municipal level to maintain healthy urban and community forests, working with many municipalities on these efforts. And then we have to have information. So forest inventory and analysis plots, we have 3,500 plots throughout the state. That is the basis, the information that our partner with the university, they're using this information, the 4 Main effort, the Forest Opportunity Roadmap, they're using this information. This is how we're finding out what is out there on our forests and what condition are our forests. Fire control, we learned from what's been happening in California that the emissions from fires do not help the climate picture, and we have a ready force that gets on the fires in Maine quickly. Our staff, as Commissioner Beal referenced, we have staff that are part of the Maine Carbon Program, Carbon Task Force, to work with small landowners to encourage practice-based initiatives. And we're also meeting with American Forest Foundation and the Natural Resource Conservation Service to look at possible new contribution agreement for working together to get these practices to the landowners. We always have regulatory intervention and working with landowners, loggers, foresters to intervene when there's regulatory issues with respect to water quality, soil disturbance, and then the tree growth tax law. We educate landowners on the value of the tree growth tax law, which has assisted in landowners keeping their lands forested. Next slide, please. So future initiatives, it's about increasing technical assistance, boots on the ground. This was identified in the as part of the Climate Council report, is that we need increased technical assistance. That does come with a cost. We used to have 23 district foresters. We have 10 now, but that's an identified need for the helping landowners. Practice-based incentives. Again, it's about where the funding will come from, but I'm hopeful working with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, we can come up with ways to leverage federal funding and get the assistance out to the landowner. And again, outreach and education, promoting federal, state, and private forestry funding federally for the 2022 budget. We are looking at a jump in stewardship funding. I work with the National Association of State Foresters, my counterparts throughout the country, in promoting that funding. Long-term monitoring, always important with those inventory plots. A new initiative is urban plots. So this will be the first year that plots will be done in urban centers to understand the roles of forests in municipalities. And then, of course, the potential for the carbon offset programs. And I'd entertain any questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Next up, we'll hear from Nancy McBrady, who's the Director of the Bureau of Agriculture, Food, and Rural Resources.
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to be here talking about such an important issue. Before I kick off my slides, I'll just mention, setting the table here, that the climate footprint of Maine agriculture is relatively small. It's approximately 2% of Maine's greenhouse gas emissions, according to estimates by the University of Maine. And this compares with 9% of emissions from US agriculture overall and 23% from world agriculture. But with our 7,000 farms and 1.3 million acres of farmland in Maine, and an average sized farm being about 172 acres, there is a lot that can be accomplished within Maine agriculture to both mitigate against and adapt to climate change challenges. Could you advance the first slide, please, Commissioner? So, as noted throughout the Maine Climate Council's planning process, one of the best mitigation strategies for Maine is conserving natural and working lands, the E1 strategy. So I've just listed a couple of things that I'll walk through with which the Bureau has a hand in. First, we support farmland preservation through assistance to the Lands for Maine Futures program, which was mentioned earlier. And over the years, LMF has contributed to 41 farmland projects that have totaled about 10,000 acres that have been designated for farmland use. And the picture there is the most recent farmland project. This is Old Talbot Farm, located in Arundel. And that includes 32 acres of open farmland, pasture, hay, and a farmstead area, as well as 97 acres of forested farmland along the Kennebec River. So that's just a terrific example of the hard work that the LMF program brings to bear for conservation and working farms. Next, the Bureau also supports farmland preservation through the Voluntary Municipal Farm Support Program. This program allows any town in Maine to develop and codify the program that will allow farm support arrangements between a town and an eligible farm. Through this arrangement, towns either fully or partially reimburse property taxes on farmland and farm buildings in exchange for 20-year conservation easements. And then, of course, the Bureau staff also provides advice and technical assistance surrounding farmland and tree growth property tax law. And we also respond to municipal inquiries and members of the public inquiries about farmland preservation as part of the local planning process. So we wear a lot of different hats in this regard. Next slide, please. Again, within the E1 framework here, let me talk a little bit about solar and energy, renewable energy. The rapid growth in solar energy facilities throughout Maine has created both opportunities and challenges for Maine agriculture, as you can imagine. The department recognizes that replacing fossil fuels with renewable energy sources that do not contribute to greenhouse gas emissions is a desirable state objective. Yet, as we work to achieve greater renewable energy generation, it is equally important to ensure that solar development does not negatively impact our state's agricultural and natural resources, including active farmland, productive timberland, rare plant populations, or rare and exemplary natural communities. So as a general statement of policy, the department strongly recommends the siting of commercial scale solar projects on non-agricultural lands. In May 2020, we issued guidance for determining prime farmland soils and soils of statewide importance for solar siting projects in Maine. That's the first bullet there. And then last fall, we also issued technical guidance for commercial solar installation and development on agricultural land. This is a technical guidance document, and it's intended to provide farmers and forest landowners with practical information to utilize when first considering solar development on their property, as well as planning important pre-construction, construction, and post-construction and decommissioning activities. It further provides technical information for solar developers as well to consider when designing, installing, and removing solar projects. And on the photo, this is just a screenshot of our new Solar Resources webpage, and it contains the links to these guidance documents and also to staff who can help answer questions. And moving to the third slide, Maine agriculture is constantly adapting to changing weather and market conditions. The impacts of climate change will be seen in extreme weather events, more intense rainstorms, more frequent droughts, etc. And while a warming climate might indicate there will be more growing days, the actual number of days that farmers can work their fields may be limited by these extreme events. So our response to climate adaptation is to improve the resilience of Maine agriculture, and improving soil health will certainly be instrumental in improving farm resilience. Soil health practices can improve crop productivity and farm profits, as well as reduce soil erosion and water quality impacts. Soil health practices can improve soil moisture holding capacity, making the land more resilient to drought and less dependent on expensive irrigation systems. And here you see a graphic from the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, which sets out the basic soil health principles. The Bureau is currently looking at how it can improve better technical assistance to farmers to address soil health and climate resilience. We're working with a number of partners that you're all familiar with, the USDA NRCS, University of Maine, Cooperative Extension, the 16 soil and water conservation districts, agriculture and other agricultural service providers in order to better facilitate technical assistance. And today, you all will be hearing about LD 427, they all flow together at this point, which would create a healthy soil programs, which I'll be speaking about later, in support of. We're very excited about. Just a quick mention about Maine's 16 soil and water conservation districts. These folks are trusted sources of objective information on soil conservation practices and policies. Each district is well positioned to serve as a clearinghouse for soil health information and to increase public and farmer awareness through their newsletters, workshops, field days, and events. I'll just mention briefly as well at the bullet, the Agricultural Water Management Board has recently been reconstituted after a bit of a gap to assist the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Environmental Protection, and of course, agricultural water users to better address water shortages and water use conflicts that can emerge during droughts. We have updated our agricultural water resources web pages to provide better information on weather monitoring, drought preparedness, and sources for technical and financial assistance. And I should also mention that our animal health and apiary programs are increasingly aware of the potential impacts of heat stress and are prepared to advise producers about these conditions and possible solutions and mitigations. Lastly, the Bureau administers a number of grant and loan programs. While these programs don't necessarily focus solely on climate resilience, they can be utilized in some instances to support projects that focus on that issue. And we will be looking at the statutes, rules, scoring criteria of all of these programs to determine if we can make them more responsive to climate needs. I should also mention that we created online content for our website relating to agricultural sustainability. We have a brand new webpage that focuses on renewable energy resources for farms. And in time, we will develop it out to include information about cover crops, soil conservation, crop insurance, greenhouse technology, composting, etc. We are trying to accomplish much of this within the constraints of existing resources. However, additional funding will be needed to address the most significant climate adaptation priorities. We do anticipate that there will be new federal funding for climate resilience. So we look forward to digging into those opportunities as they arise. And lastly, I'll emphasize that climate resilience goes hand in hand with economic viability of our farms. We can't have one without the other. Much of what we do in this Bureau is focused on improving markets for Maine products and creating better economic opportunities for farmers. A resilient farm community will go hand in hand with a more resilient climate in Maine. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you, Nancy. And we'll just hear finally from Bob Marvini, who's our Director of the Bureau of Resource Information and Land Use Planning. He's also our state geologist. And I should mention that he also is co-chairing the Science and Technical Committee of the Maine Climate Council. So take it away, Bob.
Good morning, thank you. I'm going to touch on some highlights of climate-related activities in the programs of my Bureau today. Next slide, please. And these are couched in terms of the strategies that you've already heard a lot about, protecting natural and working lands. And in this strategy to increase conserved lands in the state to 30%, a key player in this area is the Land for Maine's Future program, which, as you know, works to conserve important parts of the landscape across the entire state of Maine, and has been in place for many decades now and has been very successful. But there's many opportunities to partner and strengthen the resilience of Maine's natural resources through this program. For example, opportunities to enhance carbon storage on forest lands, opportunities to improve resilience of coastal wetlands, and also recognizing potential impacts of sea level rise on working waterfront properties. So these are areas that the Land for Maine's Future program is deliberating and will develop over the next few years. Next, please. Also, under protecting and working natural and working lands, a focus on conservation of high biodiversity areas. The Maine Natural Areas Program is the key program here, with its ecological inventory and monitoring efforts. They do landscape level natural resource assessments and inventory for at-risk plants, communities, and ecosystems. The long-term monitoring of ecological reserves and coastal wetlands is a very key part of the program. And as we've heard, these reserves can sequester significant amounts of carbon. And they also have an invasive plants program that can look at early detection and management of these invasive species that in many cases are exacerbated by climate change. Next, please. Moving now to Strategy F and empowering local and regional community resilience efforts. A key player is the Municipal Planning Assistance Program. A key factor there is the Coastal Community Grant Program that helps communities, coastal communities, address, plan for resilience, plan for adaptation to sea level rise and climate change. And we just announced this week a new round of grants in this program and expect very strong proposals to come in the next month or so. Also, this program provides technical assistance to the regional planning organizations, and these are key players in helping communities with their planning efforts focused on climate adaptation and resilience. And I want to point out that planning efforts across the state at every level, from community to regional to state, need increased capacity in order to effectively address climate change and adaptation. Next slide, please. Moving to Strategy F2, adopt official sea level rise projections. That's the Maine Geological Survey has worked in this effort. Staff of the survey developed the recommendation that's adopted in the Climate Action Plan to plan for 3.9 feet of sea level rise by 2100. And we continue to look at the best information on projected sea level rise and across the Northeast region. We also have mapped coastal areas that will likely be inundated under various scenarios, and that's all available on our website. Next, please. Emphasizing resilience through land use planning and legal tools. You've already heard from Maine Land Use Planning Commission Executive Director Judy East on these efforts, rulemaking to update the floodplain management standards and stakeholder process to update land use laws and regulations and to enhance community resilience. So this is an ongoing effort through the commission, of course, for the unorganized territories of Maine. I'll also point out that the Maine Floodplain Management Program, also in my bureau, focuses on communicating flood risk and changes in flood risk to communities throughout the state, including the UT and organized towns. So with that, that's just a brief overview. There are many other efforts that are connected to this climate action plan. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bob. And that concludes what we've prepared for you today. And I will stop sharing my screen, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks so much. So I want to be mindful of the fact that we have bills scheduled after this. I do see a couple hands up and would like to give a few minutes for questions. Representative McCray, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. This may be aimed at Ms. McBrady. That's when I wrote the question down as you were making your report. In Northern Maine, we are land rich. We have many sites that are appropriate for non-fossil fuel generation of electricity, which is going to be a commodity into the future that we just can't imagine to the degree. We definitely have spots where we would not have to use viable farmland, forest land, etc. And sometimes, even if we are taking wood to energy into consideration, that's a necessary thing and a very beneficial thing, if we can get it south of south of Aroostook County. And that's a major concern here. And I know this may not be exactly the right place to throw this out, but I'm going to sing that song wherever I get a chance and have a pair of ears that might need to hear it. We are working hard up here to get that to happen in the private industry, but any support that we can muster anywhere is really going to be to the advantage of all of us, because we're not like Southern Maine where every square foot is inhabited by humans. So I'd like to just point that out, and if anybody cares to say something about that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I appreciate those comments, Representative, and I understand exactly what you're talking about. And I want to be clear that what the department's perspective about siting of renewable energy is nuanced. We understand that every site is going to be different, and there is not a desire to lock up every square inch of farmland against renewable energy. Not all farmland is great. You understand that. There are acreage and areas that are less productive for whatever reason. So, really thinking through the strategies on a case-by-case basis is what's going to be really necessary. And it's going to take coordination between the state entities that are involved, whether it's the Department of Ag or Department of Environmental Protection, the developers themselves, the producer, the landowner. I think as long as we're all talking to each other and working together to be smart, wise decisions can be made and missteps can be avoided. But it's going to take an effort here. And I don't know if the commissioner would like to add anything to that, but I understand exactly what you're saying.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I think that was very well said, Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you both.
All right, thank you. Representative Schofield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this might be a question to Director Marvini, but first of all, let me just comment. I appreciate the direction that the department's taking regarding solar. I find the term solar farm a bit off-putting myself because I don't think they're farms. And I'm glad they're taking that approach and reviewing, and their approach is appropriate. But to Director Marvini, we're talking about 30% of the being under conservation protection in 2030. Could you tell me what it is now, so we can get some appreciation of what the increase from today's percentage might be? Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Representative Schofield. I don't have an exact number, but I think it's somewhere between 20 and 25% at this point.
I believe it's 21%, if I'm not mistaken. And just to put a little bit more emphasis on that, I think there is work that we need to do around sort of drilling down into, as I had said, some of that's going to be conservation of, natural areas and recreational lands and things like that. But there's also a real opportunity to be protecting land through working land easements. And we've done better in some places than others. So when you look at that 21% number, that's not reflective of, say, farmland protection, where we've only protected, I'm not even sure we're at 4% of our prime farmland soils or good farmland in the state at this point in time. So we have room to move, but I think it's going to require that we have more discussions about what strategies and what areas we need to be focusing on.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I see Representative Pluker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't want to get into the specifics now, but just a general request, if the department would be open to the committee putting together a list of questions around clear cutting and climate resilience. In your presentation, I was a little confused because it sounds like in some places clear cutting might be some, or from what testimony we've heard earlier this week, clear cutting might be viewed as something that's moving us towards climate resilience. But then in other places I heard today that maybe clear cutting might not be part of climate resilience. So if we could, would you be open to having further questions on that we could handle in writing or something like that?
We would be happy to try to answer those questions. I mean, I think just high level, I'll say it's nuanced. I've learned a lot in listening to the folks from the University of Maine during our Natural and Working Lands discussions and presentations they've made to the Climate Council. So certainly if you have questions that we can't answer, we'd be happy to consult with them and try to fully answer any questions that you have.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. And Representative Underwood.
Hi, Commissioner Beal. One question is, we'd like to have up here District 147 in Presque Isle. We'd like to get a power line to connect from, say, Holton, Maine down into the grid into central Maine or southern Maine. And how can the department assist with location of a power line? It could be cogeneration, or could be wind, solar, could be all kinds of different power contributions to the line. And how can the department assist in planning, not only planning it, but be able to locate it and to assist people who would like to build the thing? And if you could give us some pointers, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I guess I'd have to think about that question, unless there's any of our bureau directors have an immediate answer. I'd like to ponder that and get back to you with an answer.
I could kind of jump in. I think it's a multidisciplinary effort between a number of state agencies and an identified developer. These types of projects, I think, would involve not only the PUC, but the Department of Environmental Protection. An immediate linkage with our department would be the Maine Natural Areas Program, which would be able to assist and look at the ecological impacts that could occur or be mitigated. So if there are folks that come to mind that are active in this idea and there's some energy around it, we're certainly happy to A, talk with them, and B, help direct to the various areas where folks might need to go to have more in-depth discussions to gain momentum.
All right.
Thank you very much. That starts the direction. Thank you.
Thank you for those responses. Do I see any other questions from committee members? All right, seeing none, thank you very much for this presentation. It was really helpful, and it'll be helpful to our work this session to have this foundation. So really appreciate you all coming and giving us some of your time this morning.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate your time as well.
Thanks. All right, I'm going to turn things back over to Senator Dill.
Thank you, Representative O'Neill. We're going to switch gears and move right into our public hearings. We have 3 public hearings scheduled this morning. And before I do that, I think we have 1 or 2 new that didn't introduce themselves. Representative Landry, I don't think you were here for introductions.
No, I wasn't. I had a hard time finding the right email to get in. Representative Scott Landry from Farmington. I represent the towns of Farmington and New Sharon.
Thank you. Representative Underwood, would you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Representative Joseph Underwood, District 147 in Presque Isle. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Gifford, if you're there, would you introduce yourself, please? All right, we'll come back to him. Is there anyone else that didn't get a chance to introduce themselves this morning? All right, what we're going to do, yep, who was that? Was that you, Representative?
Yeah, this Representative Randy Hall, District 114, was on leads this morning, and for some reason my computer wouldn't let me out of that meeting and into this one. So I did make it after a while, but thank you.
All right, thank you. As was discussed, we are going to flip the order of our presentations this morning. We're going to start with LD 437. Senator Brenner has another commitment and asked to go first, so we will start with that bill this morning. And with that, just a couple things to remember: that this is our public hearing, And as I said, we have 3 bills to hear. You've heard me say this, it's electronic. We're going to go with the sponsor of the bill, followed by the department, then by any folks wanting to testify from the public, 3 minutes each. Basically, we'll go with for the bill, against the bill, and then neither for nor against the bill. And please unmute yourself when you're called upon to speak. Otherwise, keep yourself muted. And also make sure that your name appears correctly on the box so we know who is here, that it just doesn't say somebody's iPad or whatever. With that, I will open the hearing on LD 437, an act to establish the Maine Healthy Soils Program. And with that, Senator Brenner.
Thank you so much, Senator Dill, for accommodating my HCIFS schedule this morning. Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. I'm Stacy Brenner. I represent Senate District 30, which is Gorham, most of Scarborough, and part of Buxton. And I'm here today to introduce LD 437, an act to establish the Maine Healthy Soils Program. Sir Albert Howard said, "All the great agricultural systems which have survived have made it their business never to deplete the earth of its fertility without at the same time beginning the process of restoration." I come before you today with my farming hat on. I always wanted to be a farmer. For me, it's a constant process of being humbled, much like I've found the work of the legislature these past few months. I went to a land-grant university and studied plant sciences. My soils professor said to us on the first day of class, "Dirt is what's on the floor. Soil is what supports life." Soil is foundational to farming. The land I'm lucky enough to grow crops on is a prime agricultural soil of statewide importance. It's the basis for all of the success of my business. In fact, Broad Turn's farm mission statement is to build soils to last a lifetime. The bill you are considering today is designed to set up a framework to last beyond our lifetime as legislators and beyond the current administration. It's written to place our stamp of value on the importance of soil as a resource that is deserving of strong collaboration between the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, the University of Maine, Cooperative Extension, and the farmers in our great state. Let me start by telling you what this bill is not. It is not a mandate. It is not a regulatory action on farming practices, as some may fear. This bill sets up a voluntary incentive-based program to support healthy soil management practices on farms throughout our great state. It supports farmers in Kittery and Lubec, Bodenham and Bridgewater. Every county in Maine has a farming community who will benefit from this bill. In the work done by the Climate Council's Natural and Working Lands Group, they prioritized financial incentives and technical support for innovative land management and natural climate solutions that increase carbon storage and reduce greenhouse gas emissions as a way to help farmers and landowners prepare for climate change impacts. This bill is a vehicle to realize this goal. I just want to walk you through a few details of the legislation. Starting on page 1, line 16, number 5, describes healthy soil best practices. This section is based on our best science to describe healthy soils and identify the characteristics that we know to be true about soil health. Importantly, on line 5, page 2, section 1, this bill's purpose is to improve the health, yield, and profitability of our farms, help make our farms more climate ready, and to use our best soil science to drive education for farmers. Now I want to address line 30 on page 2. Investigate opportunities for market-based levers and promotional activities that incentivize healthy soils best practices. This line has prompted some conversation by some in the farming community, and I want to bring it to your attention. The goal here is to communicate to the consumer base in and out of the state that when a product is labeled Real Maine, consumers associate that with the message of food produced in Maine on healthy soils with climate smart practices. This is about celebrating our soils in the market to elevate the Maine brand. Line 32 on page 2 addresses the potential for programming, technical assistance, and financial incentives for farmers who implement healthy soils best practices. This is where the collaboration with the department, the university, and future funding from the USDA and NRCS could be realized. And finally, on line 41, it sets up a fund to receive and house that financial support from any future federal or philanthropic source. So I'm a first-generation farmer. I farm on rented land, and I work hard at soil stewardship, knowing the soil is just passing through my hands and will someday be in the hands of another. In the 20 years I've farmed in Maine, I've been blessed to call the University of Maine, Cooperative Extension, and the department great service providers. In the last 20 years, I've learned that Maine is loaded with smart, talented farmers who are deeply committed to the industry, their land, and the state that we all call home. Most of them are already engaged in many of the healthy soils best practices outlined in this legislation. So why, you ask, submit a bill that puts soil practices into statute? It's a statement of value, a call to action, a solidification of the importance of healthy soils going forward so that we can protect our most valuable agricultural resource past the time of the 130th, past the time of this administration. A vote of ought to pass on LD 437 states a commitment to what all farmers value, our soils. Let's work together to protect and steward our rich earth. I urge you to pass LD 437 and commit our state to prioritizing a healthy soils program. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any questions for Senator Brenner? Yes, Representative Hall.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Dill, and thank you, Senator Brenner, for bringing this bill forward. I think it's a great bill and a good start. I did have a question as how do you think that this program will fit into commingle with the nutrient management plans and the best management practices that are already in place for several of farms throughout the state?
Do you mean their NRCS plans?
Correct. The nutrient management plans that are required by the Department of Agriculture and the best management practices, which are from NRCS.
I think the goal here is to create a place within the department that can house all of those conversations and have a place to align all of that in one space. So my hope is that we're able to easily align it within the department. The department is going to speak to that when they offer their testimony.
Okay, thank you.
The idea is greater collaboration.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative McCray.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Brenner, for being here. It's good to meet you. Anyway, yeah, this is what we can't do in Augusta. Anyway, or can't do away from Augusta. Anyway, I have a general question, and it may be answered by people that come behind you. I look at this, and I think that the goals are are laudable. I mean, who doesn't want healthy soils? It's our future. It really is. Maine's a rural state, a lot of plant growth state now, and I'm sure into the future. So with that having been said, my question is, if a person had a small farm, 50 acres or less, let's just say, maybe a truck garden type farm, an organic farm or whatever, would it be easier for them to comply with the requirements of this bill, assuming that it's passed, than it would be for what we might call a mega farm of 1,500 acres or more? I'm just trying to ascertain where the objections might be on this, or where the pushback will come.
It's my understanding that healthy soils best practices, there are definitely opportunities for different scaled farms to implement different types of practices that would all address the end goal of healthy soils best practices. So on a large 1,500 acre crop farm that you're thinking about, you might be talking more about something like cover crops versus mulching. You know, I think that you would apply different practices based on scale.
Okay, thank you.
Representative O'Neill, did you have a question? I thought I saw your hand. Okay. Are there any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Senator Brenner, for your testimony in introducing the bill.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day, everyone.
You too, thanks. Next up will be Nancy McBrady from the department, followed by Andrew Blunt, David Costello, and Ellen Griswold. Go ahead, Nancy.
I take it that's my cue. All right. Good morning, everybody again. Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. I'm Nancy McBrady, and I am the Director of the Bureau of Agriculture, Food, and Rural Resources within the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. I am speaking in support of LD 437, an act to establish the Maine Healthy Soils Program. As has been stated already, healthy soils are the basis of Maine's natural resource economy and are a critical weapon in fighting climate change. Improving soil health through voluntary incentives has been identified as a strategy for natural climate solutions in Maine Climate Council's first climate action plan. Soil health practices can improve crop production, increase farm resilience to drought, reduce soil erosion, and sequester carbon. According to the U.S. Census of Agriculture, practices that strengthen soil health, such as no-till, reduced tillage, and cover crops, doubled in Maine from 2012 to 2017. However, that same census also indicated that soil health promoting techniques are not practiced on nearly 3/4 of Maine's cropland. There's room for improvement. We've heard from farmers and stakeholders on the ground who say that more resources are needed to move these voluntary efforts forward and build a more resilient food economy. So taking a step back, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening on the federal level and how it synchronizes with the objectives of this bill. We see national and federal interest in soil health initiatives growing right now. The National Association of State Directors of Agriculture, known as NASDA, recognizes the necessity of adapting to a changing climate that protects and enhances our nation's natural resources, while also building a resilient agriculture and food supply chain. In November of last year, NASDA and several other national organizations representing farmers, ranchers, forest owners, the food sector, and environmental advocates formed the Food and Agricultural Climate Alliance, known as FACA. This alliance is dedicated to working together to define and promote shared climate policy priorities, and they unveiled 40+ policy recommendations to guide the development of federal climate legislation. 6 focus areas guided this legislation, and soil health is one of them. Additionally, we are aware of at least 5 states that have already passed soil health laws for those states. 9 are proposing legislation, and another 5 have drafted legislation. The Agricultural Resilience Act was introduced in the prior 116th Congress a few years ago, and will likely be introduced again in the 120th. This would allow each state to receive up to $5 million to achieve its soil health program goals. Yet, to be eligible, a state legislature or tribal government shall have enacted and be currently funding a state soil health program. Federal entities look for strong partnerships on the ground as they consider awarding grants. So enacting this legislation would leverage efforts by the department and stakeholders on the ground and help ensure that we have a stronger voice when applying for federal resources. The bill in front of us today would direct the department to prioritize activities that provide information and other resources that promote soil health practices through voluntary incentive-based programs, and to support the expanded reach of efforts of partners like the University of Maine, Cooperative Extension, and the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service. This legislation provides a framework for the department to enhance its role in the education, outreach, and technical assistance needed for Maine farmers to implement practices to improve soil health and increase their resilience to the impacts of climate change. Farmers and other stakeholders are telling us that resources are needed to move such efforts forward. This bill will create a platform for the department to leverage federal, state, and private resources. The bill would establish a non-lapsing dedicated revenue fund for grants, gifts, and fees, which could be used to support farmers directly in implementing soil health practices, as well as initiatives led by partnering entities and other department activities as outlined in this bill. Such funding will be critical for the success of this program. I should also note that a recent vacancy within the department due to a planned retirement has left an opening within the Bureau of Agriculture, Food and Rural Resources for a soil specialist position. As we prepare to fill this vacancy, we also see the opportunity to shape that position to support the goals of a Healthy Soils program. And so this bill is very well timed from our perspective, and we encourage you to support it. I'm happy to answer any questions now or at the work session, and I'll just segue into trying to respond to Representative Hall's question about nutrient management plans, et cetera. You know, I would say that the concept of healthy soils is not new. The science around it is not new. It's evolving and improving. And so NRCS has certainly brought their skills to bear already with respect to these plans and soil health. NRCS is moving in the direction of really leaning into more soils health related activity and funding. So I have to imagine that there will be an increased look at soils health relative to nutrient management plans. But for this bill in particular, again, is voluntary. And everything that we're going to be doing on our end is going to try and be as productive and helpful as possible, and not anything that wouldn't be in the best interest of the farm that already has a nutrient management plan.
Thank you. Representative Pluker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director, for being here. This is one much smaller aspect of the bill, but I just wanted to highlight it, and maybe if you wanted to come back to the work session to talk about it more in depth. But is the language here is design the program to equitably distribute incentives to beginning and socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers. And I just wanted to think about, I wanted to ask how you hope to go about that. And then also with particular ideas of how we work with new American farmers versus dispossessed Black communities that are indigenous Black communities to Maine versus some of the tribes and in interacting with their own sovereignty issues as it comes to agriculture.
That's a great question, and I will be happy to put more thought into that for the working session. But I will say that, as I mentioned in the testimony, the ability for us with a staff position to really build a healthy soils program, I think is going to give us a wonderful opportunity to really dig into that in particular, Representative. And so I know it's an important area and one that we have a lot of work to do. And so I'm sure that there will be, that will be very much part of that work plan as we build this out.
Thank you. And just one quick, oh no, I lost it in my mind because the text came in as I was speaking to you. Okay, we'll talk in the work session. Thank you.
Sure.
Oh, that was it. You mentioned hiring a soil scientist for the position, which I think is obviously a great idea. But just thinking about how the soil scientist is able to interact with this world would be great.
Oh, absolutely. We absolutely want this to be a person that is in sync and has experience with the agricultural community, and that the technical expertise and education is 100% focused on that.
Thank you so much.
Representative Underwood.
Director McGrady, who are some of the other stakeholders that would be affected by this program? For example, landowners, Indian tribes, et cetera, so forth. Thank you.
Sure. You know, our agricultural community is diverse, geographically diverse. They're diverse in terms of what they're growing and producing, their size and their scale. And not only is it the end users that we'll be trying to engage with to educate and encourage and incentivize new techniques that not only will have a climate benefit, but ultimately a benefit for their product and their farm. We also will be coordinating with other service providers. We've mentioned the Natural Resources Conservation Service. They are an arm of the USDA. They have a staff here in Maine that are very skilled, that can be helpful to people on the ground. I mentioned in our prior conversation about the climate change plan, the 16 soil and water conservation districts that for many decades have been on the ground in communities working with landowners and farmers and municipalities to basically increase soil and water improvement projects in those towns and with private landowners. There's of course University of Maine and the Cooperative Extension folks there. So it's quite a large group of stakeholders that are going to be working to try and demonstrate the value ultimately to people who may not have yet employed these practices, and demonstrate that there's value and it will be beneficial for them for the bottom line, for the sustainability of their farms, and ultimately as well for the climate.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Representative Underwood, do you have a follow-up?
No, Chairman, I do not. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Director McBrady? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. And I just want to remind everybody from the committee to make sure when we ask, it's a question, not just a statement. And folks testifying, you'll have 3 minutes, no props or screen sharing. And Representative O'Neill and I have to be the background police, unfortunately, and we may have to ask you to reposition your camera if it says Dill for president or something in the background. So just so you're aware. So with that, we'll move on. Andrew Blunt.
Hi, thank you, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the Joint Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. My name is Andrew Blunt, and I'm a representative of Sierra Club Maine's over 20,000 members and supporters. Founded in 1892, the Sierra Club is one of our nation's oldest and largest environmental organizations. We work diligently to amplify the power of our 3.8 million members nationwide as we defend everyone's right to a healthy world. And we strongly support LD 437 in our pursuit of that mission. I'd first like to echo what has already been said on the value of healthy soils. Good soil is truly the bedrock of our farms and agricultural economy, our food systems, and our ecosystems. And the healthy soil practices that have been mentioned will be a key tool in maintaining that health over time, keeping farm productivity high and yielding various environmental benefits. Among them is climate change mitigation. High rates of carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus are stored in healthy soils, making improving soil health a means of drawing down atmospheric greenhouse gases. Beyond soil sequestration potential, farms with healthier soils are more resilient to severe weather events that climate change is anticipated to bring, such as heat waves, droughts, and unpredictable frosts. While some healthy soils practices may be well known and well used, accessing information remains a significant barrier for farmers. LD 437 is the right step forward to provide the resources that they need to both adapt to a changing climate and to help mitigate it. And there are 3 core reasons that we support this particular legislative step. LD 437 offers support for fully voluntary agricultural practices. By establishing the Maine Healthy Soils Program, this bill does not intend to, nor will it, mandate any particular practice. It will only provide resources to those seeking them, an agricultural grassroots means of building support for these practices. Secondly, housing these resources at the Maine DACF, as Director McBrady mentioned, is a natural progression. The department already provides many services and resources for farmers, so housing it here will build on that role, ensuring continuity across administrations and serving as a symbol of state-level support for these practices at no additional cost. Lastly, LD 437 is forward-looking. The bill establishes a non-appropriated fund ready to receive funding targeting soil health. U.S. Representative Shelley Pingree's Agricultural Resilience Act, which was previously mentioned, would provide federal grants to states with healthy soils programs like the one proposed today, showing us the importance of preparing to receive resources. Farmers have a more intimate relationship with their state's land than the vast majority of Mainers. Their livelihoods are firmly anchored to the land, making them key stewards and a vast wealth of environmental knowledge and experience. 100 such farmers have signed on in support of this bill in only the past few days, and the Sierra Club stands with them on legislation like LD 437, which promises to uplift their work as we move to mitigate and adapt to new climate realities. For the aforementioned reasons, we at the Sierra Club urge you to vote ought to pass on LD 437. I would welcome any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions? All right, seeing none, next up, is David Costello.
Good morning, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and distinguished members of the Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry Committee. My name is David Costello. I am the Climate and Clean Energy Program Director at the Natural Resources Council of Maine, and I'm testifying today in support of LD 437, an act to establish the Maine Healthy Soils Program. Improving Maine soils health is key to increasing yield, profitability, and resilience of our farms, our farm and farm products, and is vital to our efforts to reduce carbon pollution and mitigate the increasingly harmful impacts of climate change. Climate-friendly and soil-enriching agricultural practices like cover cropping, reduced tillage, and rotational grazing sequester carbon while preventing soil erosion and improving the water and nutrient holding capacity of our farmland. These cost-effective agricultural methods help Maine farms and farming communities become more resilient and productive in the face of increasing droughts and extreme weather events. The establishment of the Maine Healthy Soils Program would improve the vitality of Maine's agricultural soils by making information on emerging science and best practices more readily available to Maine farmers. The program would do this by accumulating and distributing best practices, information, and materials, maintaining an active network of practitioners and technical experts, increasing farmer-to-farmer outreach and peer learning opportunities, and aggregating and highlighting financial assistance and market-based opportunities. With the Maine Healthy Soils Program, Maine farmers would accrue more benefits. Specifically, the program would help farmers and would enhance by enhancing the capacity of their soils to reduce soil erosion, sediment, and dust, grow healthier, more vigorous crops, enhance agricultural resilience from drought, extreme weather, and pest, remove carbon and other pollutants from our atmosphere, enhance water retention and water quality, reduce the use of chemical fertilizers and polluting runoff, and increase biodiversity and wildlife habitat. Moreover, the Healthy Soils Program would aid in enhancing local food production and security and the vitality of Maine's farming communities. Maine's Climate Action Plan rightly prioritizes providing Maine farmers with the information and tools needed to confront climate change. Establishing the Maine Healthy Soils Program is an essential and cost-effective first step. For these reasons, NRCM urges the committee to support this important agricultural environmental initiative. Thank you for your consideration, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Costello? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Next speaker to testify will be Ellen Griswold, followed by Gail Van Wart, Gordon Merrick, and Hallie Arno. So, Ellen, take it away.
Good morning, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. My name is Ellen Griswold, and I'm testifying today on behalf of Maine Farmland Trust, or MFT, in support of LD 437. Over the last 16 months or so, I have appreciated being a part of the Maine Climate Council's Natural and Working Lands Working Group, and MFT was thrilled to see the inclusion of many important agriculture-related strategies in the new Climate Action Plan. Principal among those strategies was providing farmers with greater support to build soil health through increased financial, technical, and research assistance, thereby enhancing farm resilience and profitability and sequestering greenhouse gas emissions. LD 437 would further this critical climate plan strategy by establishing a program within the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry that connects farmers with key resources and equips them with the tools and knowledge they need to begin voluntarily using healthy soils practices. Over the last couple years, and especially after the terrible drought conditions last year, an increasing number of farmers want to know more about soil health and how it can benefit their farms. In fact, after circulating for only a few days, over 100 farmers signed on to a letter supporting LD 437, which I've attached to my testimony. This bill would make soil health a priority for the department, and in doing so, ensure that farmers in the state have easy access to the information and support services they want. While many organizations in Maine provide excellent soil health resources, farmers' access to those resources would be much improved through a coordinated state program. LD 437 would provide this coordination by creating a one-stop shop for soil health information that both connects interested farmers with farmers who have experience building soil health and promotes the technical, research, and financial assistance services offered by such entities as the University of Maine, Cooperative Extension, Soil and Water Conservation District offices, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and many other organizations and businesses. As others before me have, it is important to emphasize that LD 437 does not mandate the use of practices to build soil health, nor does it even require that particular agricultural practices be promoted. Instead, the bill focuses on promoting many different practices that are aligned with soil health principles and which are consistently reevaluated based on the experience of farmers, emerging soil science, and Indigenous knowledge. The bill would also establish a fund to distribute any future federal or philanthropic funding to farmers and service providers to support soil health practices. As you have heard, there are proposals circulating in Congress now to provide state programs with funding to support soil health. By passing LD 437, we can ensure that those resources are available in Maine. For all of these reasons, we hope you will support this bill and ensure that agriculture remains a vibrant part of Maine's economy. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next up is Gail Van Wart. You want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, please? You're still muted, Ms. Van Wart.
Mute.
There you
Okay,
go.
finally there. Thank you. All right. Good morning, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. I am Gail Van Wart of Peaked Mountain Farm in Dedham, Maine. It's a farmland trust for Everfarm located on my farm located in Hancock County. And I wish to reiterate my written testimony for my support on LD 437, an act to establish the Maine Healthy Soils Program. I am very honored to be the fourth generation of my farm, which was established in 1868. And I've had the privilege of growing up on that farm. So I have seen a lot of years in what the climate has done over those years. And since 2002, when it became my responsibility as the fourth generation steward, I had to deal with those situations. And I realized right off the bat that immediately, even though I knew the blueberries and I knew the pollinators, I really did not know anything about them until it was my responsibility. And so that's why it was really, really important when I came across a grant application for Farms for the Future. And what happened with that, and finding it accidentally, it put 4 experts at my kitchen table with the knowledge, experience, and connections we did not have to answer the questions that we had. And it was the foundation, just like the soil in Maine is the foundation for every single crop. And from that foundation, we have based everything else we have ever done on our farm. And over 19 years, I've been able to access that knowledge, experience, and connections because of being able to have it from the beginning. And I see that young farmers today have a lot of searching to do, and they don't know where to get everything all in one basket to find the answers that they need. And I see a Maine Healthy Soils Program as extremely important to sustain Maine and to help young farmers get their feet on the ground and set up the foundation they will need to be successful and to address the challenges that our climate is causing, which will get worse as we go down the line. We're always changing. It's always changing, and we have to learn how to adapt and adjust to it. And if we don't adapt and adjust to what we need to, then it's just a disaster for the environment and for the crops and for the people that depend upon them. So I hope that you will support this bill and that everybody in the committee will support this bill, because I think it is very important to move forward to address these issues so that we have a sustainable Maine and we can be proud that we have done something ahead of time instead of behind the times. This is a wonderful connecting the dots for farmers.
Thank you.
Program, as far as I can.
Thank you for your
Thank you
testimony.
so much.
Yep, appreciate it. Are there any questions for Ms. Van Wart? Again, thank you. Moving on, Gordon Merrick.
Hello, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, members of the Joint Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. I'm Gordon Merrick, a legal fellow with the Conservation Law Foundation, and I'm pleased to offer this testimony in strong support of LD 347. As we've heard already today from the testimony and the briefing, farmers are on the front lines of responding to the effects and dealing with the effects of climate change. Shifting growing seasons, different rainfall patterns, new types of invasive species and pests are all things that they will have to deal with. But alongside these natural hurdles, there's also an enormous economic hurdle for many farmers in Maine, with the average income for Maine farmers per the USDA 2017 census at just under $17,000 annually, which is a hurdle in itself to be able to have economic viability. But alongside this frontline effects that they're feeling, farmers are also critical partners in the state's efforts to combat climate change and support a healthy ecosystem. We've already heard about the benefits of building a healthy soil, with, including drought resilience, stormwater management, water quality, and biodiversity. The list goes on. But then these practices also increase farm productivity and profitability by optimizing inputs and increasing resiliency on farms. A 2017 study found that farmers can benefit from an economic return of over $100 an acre by using cover crops and other best management practices, which is a substantial amount when you're talking about an income of just averaging just under $17,000 a year. LD 437 is an important initial step towards supporting resilient, climate-smart agriculture in the state of Maine. We're pleased that the bill includes language ensuring that the Healthy Soils program would support beginning and socially disadvantaged farmers as defined by the USDA. It is critical to prioritize these communities in the allocation of the program's incentives, including funds, technical assistance, and education. And it is especially important that the Wabanaki tribes have access to the benefits of this program, which will build on Indigenous knowledge and soil management. In closing, we urge the passage of LD 437 as an important first step in investing in the health of our state's soils. The future of Maine's food system and our climate depend on it. Thank you for your consideration. Please do not hesitate to contact me if we can provide any other additional information. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for Mr. Merrick? All right, seeing none. Again, thank you. Next will be Hallie Arno, followed by Jenny Tilton Flood, Melissa Law, and Nathan Drummond. So with that, Hallie, if you want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, we'll get started.
Thank you. Good morning, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the Joint Standing Committee of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. Thank you for the opportunity for letting us speak on this very important topic. My name is Hallie Arno. I'm a resident of Lincolnville, and I'm coming to you as both a young farmer and ecologist in strong support of LD 437. Like many Mainers, I have had the opportunity to work on a farm for 4 summers, and I was able to learn about farming from people who care deeply about the environment and the soil. I was lucky to be able to work on a farm that was owned by a land trust, so we had the opportunity to grow food for the food pantries, local schools, and a retirement community, and that really helped me feel connected to the environment and the community. And I saw firsthand the importance of nourishing the soil, making sure it had enough nutrients and was healthy, and that allowed us to be able to steward the land and grow more food, because ultimately healthy soil ends up having healthier and higher quality crops. Caring for Maine's soils is caring for Maine's people by giving us access to food and caring for the environment. I'm lucky that my time on the farm was an educational experience because it was land trust owned. It was managed by someone who had a master's degree in soil science, and soil health was a priority. But I understand that not all farms are able to have these opportunities for education and these resources. So this is why a bill like this would be important to expand the educational opportunities for all farms around Maine. Now I'm studying ecology at College of the Atlantic, and that is really affirming what farmers intuitively know about how soil is the foundation for terrestrial life and the benefits of healthy soil, like absorbing nutrients to keep the water clean, leading to healthier watersheds, and leading to higher productivity in the fields. I also appreciate that this bill is science-based and going off of the most important and the best practices for soil. And it's addressing a critically important topic that we all know is climate change. So Maine relies on soil as the foundation of our food, community, and economy. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Arno? All right, seeing none. Again, thank you for your testimony. And we will move on to Jenny Tilton Flood.
Good morning, Senator Dale, Representative O'Neill, and members of the Joint Standing Committee of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. In case we haven't yet met, my name is Jenny Tilton Flood. I'm one of 21 family members in 3 generations caring for land and animals at our family farm, Flood Brothers, in Clinton, Maine. We're proud to be a part of the reason that our town is known as Maine's dairy capital. And along with 30 co-workers, we care for 3,100 cows and steward thousands of acres of rented and owned land. And together we make sure that around 17,000 gallons of fresh Maine milk is on its way to our neighbors' tables every day. And on this day, I'm here to urge you to support LD 437, an act to establish the Maine Healthy Soils Program. We've been farming this land for hundreds of years, and its rhythms have been almost embedded in our DNA. And as the climate changes, the beat of the seasons does as well. The whens and hows of preparing the soil and sowing seed becomes less predictable, and we find ourselves needing to find alternative and new ways of doing things more often than we ever have before, all while trying to ensure that the most sustainable practices that we've always had in place fit into these changes, as well as being able to afford and invest in new practices without risking our financial stability and the welfare of our cows in pursuit of healthy soils. We know that we are part of the solution to the problems that climate change brings with it. But if we are not here and we are not well supported by expertise, resources, and peers of diverse approaches and experiences, then these problems will go unsolved. The Maine Healthy Soils Program is a solid foundation to helping Maine's farmers meet the challenges that climate change and our ever-changing world and economy presents, and dedicated to the idea that taking care of our soils is paramount to the resiliency and success of our food systems and communities. By erecting a framework of communication, pooling of knowledge, and creating a repository of findings and possible paths to experimentation, grants, and funding, the program provides a connectivity and collaboration that farmers like myself and my peers and new farmers will need and require to meet the challenges of climate change head on. The changing of time and the changing of climate is non-negotiable. What is negotiable is how well we navigate it all, and LD 437 bridges the experience of our past and our science and farmers with the promise and ingenuity of the future, being different, being bold, and being a change, not just simply for the sake of change, but in the creation of a framework that is based on tradition and structurally designed to adapt to a future unknown is what makes the Maine Healthy Soils program such a good thing for Maine, its people, and its land. While the agencies and arms of government and education have done a remarkable and wonderful job of keeping our ever-decreasing numbers informed and connected, the Maine Healthy Soils program makes the exchange of ideas and expertise a priority and focus. Something that has waned as our agricultural community has become smaller, even though it is a necessity if we wish to continue to grow that community and if we want to support and bolster our farmers. For me, this network of research, findings, experience, and expertise is the most important piece. The piece that is so difficult to get back once lost, and having our Maine government recognize that and put forward this idea through LD 437 and the Maine Healthy Soils program to equip us all with strength and resources as we march headlong into the future is one of the best ways Maine government can serve the people of Maine. And as a dairy farmer and a mom and a Mainer, I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, again, thank you for your testimony. Next is Melissa Law.
Good morning, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. My name is Melissa Law. I am co-owner of Bumbleroot Organic Farm, a certified organic vegetable and flower farm located in Windham, Maine. I currently serve as the representative of agriculture on the Maine Climate Council and participate on the council's Natural and Working Lands Working Group. I'm here to speak in strong support of LD 437 and act to establish the Maine Healthy Soils program. As a vegetable farmer, the future of my business depends upon the health of our soils. Healthy soils lead to high productivity and strong crop yields, which in turn bring profitability and financial security for my family and the people we employ. Building the health of our soils rather than depleting them is critical to the growth and sustainability of our farm operation. Beyond the viability of our small business, the food we produce feeds over 1,000 families each year through our farm market, CSA, and partnerships with local restaurants. The health of our soils translates directly to the health of our customers and in turn, our communities. My work on the Maine Climate Council has helped me understand the importance of Maine's natural resource industries to Maine's economy. Agriculture has always been a vital part of Maine's identity, and it will continue to play a critical role in our state. The path to Governor Mills' goal of carbon neutrality by 2045 relies as much on carbon sequestration in Maine's forests and soils as it does on the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. We need to draw down the carbon in the atmosphere, and soil health practices can do that. Maine's Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry has a responsibility to lead the way and provide the resources and incentives farmers need to implement healthy soil best practices on a voluntary basis. That is what this bill is designed to do. In the 6 years we've been in business, my farm has experienced hailstorms, drought, and extreme winds that have damaged our crops and led to erosion on our sloped fields. As we look to the future, we realize that these threats will become more frequent, unpredictable, and severe, and we are constantly trying to improve our practices in order to mitigate the worst of what is to come. We've received support from numerous service providers in Maine as we adopt new methods and try out new tools and technology aimed at boosting soil health and carbon sequestration. These resources should be aggregated and easily accessible to everyone, and the Maine Healthy Soils program will help ensure that they are. COVID-19 has exposed the weaknesses in our global supply chains and underscored the importance of strengthening our local food system to ensure food security for Maine people. In the past year, as grocery shelves emptied out, Mainers turned to local farms and food producers or to their own gardens for sustenance. The Maine Healthy Soils program will provide the resources that Maine farmers need to improve the health of their soils so that we can grow the healthiest food possible for our state and build more resilient farm businesses and a more resilient Maine. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Are there questions, Ms. Law? Okay, again, thank you for your testimony. Up next will be Nathan Drummond, followed by Naomi Brodigan, Penny Jordan, and Heather Spalding. So Nathan, are you there? You were there. Did we lose Nathan?
Oh, I think I clicked the wrong person out. One moment, please. Screen jumps around. I apologize, Nathan.
No worries at all. Can you hear me at the moment?
Yes.
Great. Good morning, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. My name is Nathan Drummond. My wife, Gabrielle, and I own and operate Six River Farm. We're an organic vegetable farm located in Bodenham, Maine. And over the years, we've grown from a small 2-person operation to one of the largest organic farms in the state of Maine. And I think what I guess I would like to stress to you today is I guess just first off, quite honestly, how scary climate change is at the moment to farmers in Maine. We identify effects of climate change as the single most challenging or largest challenges for the viability of our operation in the short term. A range of inclement weather, changing pests is extremely challenging on the farm. And I think more than that, on a medium to long term level, the effects of climate change pose an existential threat to our specific operation. We farm along the shores of Mary Meeting Bay on alluvial soils located very close to sea level. And we have significant questions about whether our farm will be a viable operation in 30 or 40 years. And I think that's when we look at our young children, have conversations with them about the farm, that's a really challenging reality. So I think there is a real sense of urgency here. And I know that the proposed Maine Healthy Soils program is just one small step towards addressing the effects of climate change for Maine farmers. But we need to be taking those small steps right now, because you can't take large steps without taking the small steps. I hope and I believe that the Maine Healthy Soils program can provide the foundation for, I think, a larger pivot in the approach of DACF in the direction of working with Maine farms like ours to rapidly make the necessary agronomic, technological, marketing changes that are going to be necessary and essential for Maine farms to survive the decades ahead. I think simply put, Maine farms in the next 10, 20, 30 years will need to undergo tremendous transformations to both survive the challenges that climate change presents, but also to take advantage of some of the new associated opportunities. I do think we are moving into an era when consumers will be increasingly willing to pay a premium for farm products grown with climate-friendly practices, and then also that carbon sequestration will provide farms with new revenue opportunities as well. So again, I think Maine farms are going to have to look really different in 10, 20, 30 years than they do today. And this bill establishing a Maine Healthy Soils program, I think, is just a small starting point to that greater transformation that DACF is going to have to make to helping us farms make that transition. And so I do urge you to support the bill. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Drummond.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Naomi Brodigan.
Good morning.
Thank you, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. My name is Nomi Brodgam. I own and operate Dickey Hill Farm in Monroe, Maine. I join you all today in support of LD 437, an act to establish the Maine Healthy Soils Program. Farming has always been challenging, and we as farmers continue to witness the climate crisis exacerbating these challenges as weather is becoming less predictable and more severe. Nationally, my peers and I more and more often are farming through floods, droughts, wildfires, hurricanes, hailstorms, and other extreme weather. In Maine, we all just farmed through our hottest summer on record. Last fall, more than 80% of our state was experiencing severe to extreme drought conditions. My partner and I own and operate a diversified farm in Waldo County. Here at our farm, not only are we trying to adapt to increasingly unpredictable weather, but we also each season find ourselves up against new unanticipated challenges. During last year's summer drought, we ran our irrigation 24/7, but found it was not enough. While we were preparing to drill a second well, we're acutely aware that drilling more wells and other reactionary responses to the climate crisis are costly endeavors and ultimately unsustainable, both economically and ecologically. In tandem with drilling our well, we are also working on increasing our soil's organic matter and its water holding capacity, and therefore increasing our farm's drought resiliency. We want to be able to continue to feed our community, and we feel the burden of climate change adaptation and building business resiliency to survive the climate crisis should not be on farmers alone. We are just beginning to understand the ways in which building healthy soils through methods, both practiced and proven by Indigenous people around the world, such as reduced tillage, cover cropping, and rotational grazing, can both prepare us for extreme weather events and also help mitigate the impacts of climate change through carbon sequestration. But like many farms, we need support to implement these adaptations in a meaningful way. And we're appreciative of LD 437, which prioritizes both financial and technical support for something as foundational to farming during the climate crisis as building healthy soils. So I urge you to support LD 437 and welcome any questions. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none. Again, thank you for your testimony. And next we have Penny Jordan.
Hi, everybody. I am Penny Jordan, and I am one of the owners of Jordan's Farm here in Cape Elizabeth. I'm a fifth generation farmer. We till approximately 50 plus acres of mixed vegetables each year. And I am here to support LD 437. I submitted some written testimony. I'll just try to hit some highlights, and I'm so glad I don't see that clock because that like creates lots of angst for me. So as we know, farms play an important role in our society. The production of food and the maintenance of health, and soil is an integral part of achieving that. I believe it's time to bring the needed focus to soils programs to ensure that we continue to build and enhance them as a tool to mitigate challenges brought on by climate shifts and to maximize production capacity for our farms. Many states recognize the need to focus on soil health. In 2019, there was a lot of action across the country. Some states passing soil health legislation, many engaging in the debate, and many are continuing to create legislation. They recognize the importance of soil health to enhance, leverage, and develop programs to build these soils. Through the leadership of the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, I believe Maine will be able to garner the federal funding and implement programs in collaboration with the university, cooperative extension, and farms to assist these farms in implementing enduring programs. The key is at this point in time that we do enduring programs. This legislation is not saying that our farms are not continually working on those soils. It's recognizing that the work that is done should be recognized and in some ways rewarded. It recognizes the need for a fund to fund soil health as a key tool to addressing climate shift and helping create a resilient food system. Healthy soil programs can provide incentives such as loans, grants, research, technical assistance, educational materials on healthy soil practices. They can increase drought tolerance, they can increase fertility, they can increase farm productivity. They can augment NRCS programs, they can work with farms to leverage federal programs. Nutrient-rich soil can help improve yields, thus supporting farms economically. There are people that may feel that this should not be a statute, that it is a stepping stone to overregulation, but I feel it's a mechanism to create a focus, real focus on building soils and creating enduring programs. I'm a believer that no bill is written perfectly out of the chute. I feel this bill has a solid foundation from which to work. I think work sessions can help craft a bill that will work for Maine farms and position us to enhance and create programming to invest in this very important asset for Maine. And I urge you to support this program.
Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Next is Heather Spalding, followed by Julia St. Clair, Don Flannery, Kara O'Donnell, and then the last one I would have is Nanny Kennedy. So with that, Heather.
Good morning, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the committee. I'm Heather Spalding, Deputy Director of the Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. MOSCA supports LD 437, and it is because healthy soil is the foundation of organic agriculture that this is MOSCA's top policy initiative for this legislative session. As members of the Ag Committee, you're well aware of the importance of soil health to farmers, but for the benefit of others who are learning about the values that soil's organic matter, biodiversity, structure, moisture, and nutrients, I'll state the organic mantra: feed the soil, not the plant. We know that farmers across the management spectrum share our commitment to protecting soil health, and we're very happy that this incentive-based, non-regulatory program will be available to all Maine farmers, providing much needed technical support, peer-to-peer learning opportunities, and access to funding to implement practices suited to their specific soil types and sectors. MOSCA is creating a more local, more organic agriculture, and we want the evolution to happen through incentives that inspire land managers to improve the health of their soil so that they can increase yields, decrease expenditures, become more resilient to unpredictable and dramatic swings in weather patterns, and help meet Governor Mills' ambitious greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals. Agriculture accounts for about 10% of greenhouse gas emissions in the US, and Maine's agriculture sector emits approximately 2% of the total state emissions across all reported sectors. Agriculture is part of the climate change problem, but it can and should be a big part of the solution because of the ability to sequester carbon in the soil and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Maine's DACF is the perfect place to set up a one-stop shop for clear guidance on available healthy soil resources at the local, state, and federal level. This program will be a farm viability solution to many established challenges in our agricultural sector, including the perennial cuts to budgets of Cooperative Extension and the University of Maine School of Food and Agriculture. The fund associated with this program would be established at no cost to the Maine taxpayer and would receive substantial and could receive substantial federal support. Representative Pingree's Agricultural Resilience Act and Senator Booker's Climate Stewardship Act call for establishing state healthy soil programs in order to receive grant funding through this legislation. I've attached a map to my recent map showing where similar state laws exist or are under development. Let's be sure that Maine is well positioned to receive federal funding through the Maine Healthy Soils Program. Also attached to my testimony is a letter of support for this bill with more than 100 Maine farms signed on in just a few days. Thank you for your consideration. We're very excited about this bill and we hope you will support it.
Thank you. Are there questions? Representative Hall.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Spalding, I did hear you just mention there was no cost associated with this bill. And I think that there is some money that's got to be generated somehow to start the fund so that we can receive federal money if it becomes available. Am I correct about that?
I think that the fund could be seeded with a minuscule amount. I'm not sure what the fiscal note, like how much work it would take to establish that fund, but it could be established to receive private and federal funds. And then maybe in the future there could be state funds in the future, but we recognize that the state is really struggling right now. The economy is very challenging given what we've all been through in the past year, but we feel like we can go ahead and position ourselves for the future.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions? Seeing none. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. The last one I have to testify in favor is Julia St. Clair.
Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the Joint Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. My name is Julia St. Clair Voyers, and I am here today as a representative for Maine Youth for Climate Justice, a coalition of over 300 youth from across the state who are fighting for bold climate action and a just transition to a livable future in Maine. I'm speaking today in support of LD 437, an act to establish the Maine Healthy Soils Program. Soil stands as the foundation of all terrestrial life on Earth, and it is inherent to our very existence on this planet. Soil is also a symbol. We must nurture and sustain the ground we walk on, take care of what takes care of us. Healthier soils mean healthier communities and healthier environments. Maine Youth for Climate Justice recognizes the existential threat that climate change poses to our futures and to all future generations. It is clear that climate change particularly threatens Maine's agricultural community. As weather patterns shift with the changing climate, farmers will continue to face challenges, including excessive droughts and unpredictable precipitation. LD 437 aims to make the resources, tools, and technical assistance to achieve healthy soils more accessible to Maine's farmers, facilitating the adoption of more climate-focused soil practices. As stewards of the land, farmers can be part of the solutions to tackling the climate crisis, as soil plays a unique role in the carbon cycle with its incredible potential to sequester carbon from the atmosphere. A key aspect of this bill is that it does not outline one proper way to maintain soil, but instead allows for shifts and changes in soil health best practices based on the latest science. Farmers are an integral part of Maine's economy and carry with them Maine's agricultural heritage. They deserve access to the tools, resources, and technical assistance that can help them to care for the soil in the face of a changing climate. Now is the time for Maine to take decisive action in tackling the climate crisis. LD 437 would directly support Maine's goals of reducing carbon and working towards net zero emissions. The Maine Climate Council report that was released last year, Maine Won't Wait, outlined the necessity of addressing soil health and soil maintenance and climate solutions. By encouraging and supporting healthy soil practices, LD 437 is a step in the right direction, putting Maine on track to meet the Maine Climate Council's goals and objectives. Maine Youth for Climate Justice believes in seeking bold solutions to the climate crisis, meeting the urgency that the science of the moment demands. For the above reasons, our coalition urges you to vote ought to pass on LD 437. Thank you for taking the time to hear my testimony today, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? All right, seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up, I have Don Flannery.
Good morning, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill. I'm Don Flannery, the Executive Director of the Maine Potato Board, and I guess I get to go first in opposition. The Maine Potato Board is speaking in opposition to the bill today, and it's not in opposition to healthy soils or the department developing a healthy soil program. Earlier today, I listened to the briefing from the department on the climate action plan and all of the efforts that are being done there. And it's my understanding, and I believe all those activities or most of those activities are being initiated without legislation. I think they're done under executive order. And so our concern is that, you know, moving this bill forward as part of legislation and putting it in statute is concerning to us. Our industry, not only in Maine, but across the country, as well as, you know, a lot of agriculture, our buyers, our processors of potatoes are all started years ago looking at sustainability, and part of the sustainability program was soil health. So it's something that we're very involved in. Our concern is that while this is voluntary and putting it in legislation, this legislature, the 130th, this administration, look at it as a voluntary program and a way to, you know, help Maine move forward as it relates to soil health and provide some resources. We support that. But the unintended consequences are what happens in the 131st, 132nd, and another administration. Does it still continue to be voluntary? If you put it in legislation and within the department, and like I said, a program in a department is not our issue, but does that then become a matrix in which everyone is scored against? And that directs resources of the department. Not all agriculture in this state may fare well under a metric system where they're being scored. And I think that's a concern to us. We would support the program if this bill was resolved to do what it's looking to do, and come back to the committee with a full report as to how we're going to do it, what are the things we're going to do, what are the resources we're going to need, how much money we're going to need. I think that if we want to support a healthy soil program in Maine and put it in the Department of Agriculture, I think it can be done without being in statute, such as they're doing with the Climate Action Plan. And if it's important to Maine, which I think it is, develop the plan and put it out there, put the resources in with the department. You're going to have to put resources there. I know earlier they talked about the new soil scientist as a new soil position. Is that enough? What resources are there going to be needed? I think that if you're looking at federal funding, and I believe that there probably will be federal funding available, I'm not so sure that the plan has to be in law, other than Maine probably has to have a plan, but I don't know that it has to be in legislation and law to receive those funds. So like I said, that's our concerns moving forward with this bill, and gladly be part of a work session or answering your questions today. But our opposition is not against the need for resources to farmers and the importance of soil health. So thank you for your time and gladly answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Flannery? Representative Underwood. Representative Underwood, I think you disappeared from my screen.
Okay,
There
how's
you
things
are.
go? Okay. The wind must be great up here or something. Anyway, Mr. Flannery, do you think this law should be just as reference material used by the department for any inquiries that may come in?
I don't know if quite to answer the question, but I think that, this legislation, I don't see an issue developing the resources within the department. I don't know that we need to have legislation to do that. I think that there are going to be a lot of issues that need to be addressed. The department working with NRCS, as they talked about, and cooperative extension and industry and everyone else, I think that has value. I think there's a good idea to have a plan. I just don't know if that plan needs to be in legislation.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Flannery, for your testimony. I'm curious, did your members bring you this? Did you suggest that that something about this might be threatening. I'm just having trouble understanding how a voluntary program that creates a bucket is
It
going
was
to
a discussion, there was a discussion we had as a board, and those were the concerns. Does it become, all good, well-intended things can change. And the concern was moving forward, does this become regulatory? And also the issue of, if you're going to put this in statute, is that going to direct the department to develop, for the lack of better words, I use matrix because everything we do in our industry is a matrix system. You score here, you score there. Do they then make a matrix out of this? And it wouldn't be, and I'm not, and our concern would be some growers would not necessarily score well under that matrix, depending on what's included in it. And it wouldn't be just potato farmers. Our concern would be that for anybody, any farmer in Maine, may not be able to score well under whatever matrix are developed. And if it's in law, while this is voluntary, there's an implication out there that if it's in law, it very well can become regulatory. So that's our concern, Representative Neal.
Thank you. A follow-up, if I may, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Thank you. Are there, similar programs that benefit your farmers that are in law? I'm having trouble seeing the parity here when we've heard from so many farmers today who have requested this.
Right. What we have in law are regulatory. Whether it be seed certification, cull disposal, speaking from the potato industry, most things that we deal with are involved with as it relates to the department are regulatory, or with DEP regulatory on water use and those sorts of things. So, our perspective is that most things we deal with as it relates to the state are regulatory. Yeah. And so we're saying, this is a good idea. Having a plan, have a healthy soils program in Maine, having a plan to implement that, having the resources to do it isn't a bad idea. Our concern is there doesn't need to be regulatory in statute to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A follow-up, if I may.
Sure.
So I think it's fair to say that these fears are speculative, correct?
The unknown is
they're forward-looking. It's not about what the present bill is doing.
Well, right. Yeah. I mean, here's what it says today, and here's what the intentions are today. But what does it mean tomorrow? And is this just the first step in getting to a regulatory process? And does it really need to be in statute to really do what this bill wants to do? The climate action plan that I listened to the briefing on this morning, I don't believe that's in statute. That's not there wasn't legislation that created that. So my argument would be if you're doing all this work there, that is valuable work, this will be part of, from what I heard, why does this necessarily need to be in statute?
Okay, thank you for your testimony.
You're welcome.
Representative McCray.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Flannery.
Good morning, Representative McCray.
I've lived in the county, as you well know, all my life. And I watched farming practices change almost like you can't recognize what there was 40 years ago or 50 years ago. And I can speak from experience. And I see things going on with soil maintenance and soil cover crops and soil tillage and large machinery and you name it. It just, my grandfather, it'd kill him to see the way it's changed, just out of shock. That's just a statement. My question, I've seen farming practices improve greatly. And it seems to me that large farms, potato farms, broccoli farms, big farms, have an edge in the fact that they have organizations behind them to help them move in the direction of better soil science, whereas small farms may not. Okay, I all morning I have listened to people that made good, that this appeared to me to be very important to their relatively small operations. And I've been thinking, well, I imagine that most of the big guys are already doing that. So it just seems to me that this might be a helpful hand up to the people that don't have mega organizations to help them stay successful, improve their land, and look to the future of that land. That's just kind of my take. It's not that I don't support big farms, because I do. I live right in the middle of them. Okay, but I think that the people that have testified today, I haven't seen any 1,500 acre farmers here. I know you're representing some, and not all that big by any means. They may, but could you comment on that, please?
You've seen all the 50 years of agriculture in Aroostook County, Representative McRae, and maybe a few more. But you're exactly right. Our industry has changed tremendously. When we were all much younger, the rotation in Aroostook County was potatoes, 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 and potatoes, potatoes, and potatoes. And that's why Aroostook County could support 200,000 acres of potatoes, and now we have 50,000 acres because there was no rotation, and highly erodible lands were being planted that never should have been in row crop. They'd be great for cows and goats, but they should have never been planted. So that's changed a lot. Our industry has changed recently, and I say recently, starting, let's say, within 10 years, of looking at 3, 4 and extended rotations, and working with different cover crops in there. And so, yeah, I mean, our industry has been doing that. And our industry, whether it's working with us or working with Extension or working with private crop consultants or whoever, have probably more resources available to the potato industry than other smaller farmers, whether they're farming fruit and vegetables or orchards or whatever they may have. So that's why what I'm saying, and our position is that we see the value in this program. We really do. And putting resources to it, when I say the value, if you put it in the department, you give the department the resources. I don't know that one soil scientist that they talked about is going to be enough. And it's not only going to be human resources, it's going to be financial resources. If the state wants to make that commitment, great. And I think that's a wonderful thing to do, and we'll support it. And if there's a way that they want to develop their program, we'll be involved in it. Our concern is, and I have said it before, I don't see why it needs to be legislated any more than the climate action plan needs to be legislated that's ongoing now. So you're exactly right. And I think that those valuable resources should be somewhere, and the department should be working collaboratively with NRCS and Extension, industry. Such, we'll work with the department as it relates to things. Maybe we can offer something up for our industry that'll be beneficial to others. But it's just, I'm not, we're concerned that it to be in legislation where it may lead in the future. And that no reflection on anybody on this Zoom meeting today, or anybody that's given testimony today, or anyone else. That's just our concern.
Got it.
Representative Osher.
Thank you very much. Hello, Mr. Flannery. Good to see you again. I am always impressed with the Potato Board and the ways in which they support modifying agriculture to do what's better for soil. I was funded as a faculty member to do research on soil erosion potato fields, and I think that's great. And my experience is also having been employed as a technocrat, meaning a scientist that worked as a soil scientist for the federal government, is that when budgets are slim or trimmed, that the federal government, or in this case, the state government, they need to do what it says and says that they will do. But if it doesn't say that they will do it, that might get trimmed. And as you just mentioned, that soils are very important, and soil erosion is a major problem, and farming the wrong place has a negative impact. So my question to you is, can you think of a state program that would be funded when things get tight and that would disappear, but you're glad that it exists?
State program that is funded, but if funds get tight, it disappeared, it wouldn't exist. I got to think about it. I mean, I can't think of one right off the top of my head. I understand your point. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, Representative, but I'll think about that. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none. Whoops. I see somebody swatting flies down in the corner here. Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dawn, for being here. Representative McCray alluded to big farmers having resources that maybe small farmers don't have. Would you say that that's entirely true? I mean, small farmers, I being a small farmer, have access to extension, state programs and technical information. Also, being a member of MOFGA, I have MOFGA. So, I mean, isn't there plenty of help already out there for small farmers just as much as there is large farmers?
There are many programs out there that are available to farmers, no matter what size they are. You know, Universal Maine Cooperative Extension, NRCS programs. You know, all those programs are available to, regardless. It doesn't have any, you know, reflection on size of farms. I think that larger farms may have the ability to have some additional resources, such as using private consultants more than someone that is a smaller farm. So that's something they're paying for, and that's available to them more so than maybe somebody that's, you know, raising 5 acres of fruits and vegetables. Also, our organization has resources available to potato farmers that, you know, someone that is a small fruit and vegetable farmer may not have those resources readily available to them. You know, as you know, or Senator Black, you know, we have an agronomist on staff, a plant pathologist on staff, and an engineer on staff. So, you know, they work with potato farmers. So those, yeah, a lot of programs are available to everyone, but there are some instances where there are probably more resources available to larger farmers other than smaller farmers. The resources we provide, the agronomy, plant pathology, and engineering, the growers through their assessment, the infamous potato tax, are paying for those services, but we're providing them as an industry. So, you know, there are and there aren't, I think, in some cases. Hope that answered your question.
Are there other questions for Mr. Flannery? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Flannery, for your testimony.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Next up is Cara O'Donnell.
Hi, good morning. I'd just like to clarify that I am speaking in support of LD 437 today.
Okay, thank you. We'll change that on our list. I'll make sure that Cheryl does that.
Good morning, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. My name is Cara O'Donnell. I'm the Natural Resources Director for the Heuristic Band of Micmacs, and I am speaking in support of LD 437 today to advocate and to establish the Maine Healthy Soils Program. Thank you for the earlier comments regarding inclusion of underrepresented communities and Wabanaki tribes. That's promising to hear. The Heuristic Band of Micmacs operates a small mixed vegetable farm in Heuristic County with a mission to provide a variety of sustainably produced healthy foods for both the tribal and local communities. We provide a variety of produce, fruit, and value-added products, as well as high-quality brook trout that we raise at our farm store in Caribou. The farm began as a way for us to address health disparities experienced by our community, and to that end, we aim to ensure access to wholesome produce to all local residents. Speaking in support of the Healthy Soils Program, healthy soils do not stand alone. Their presence directly relates to water quality and greenhouse gases. Ensuring healthy soils results in clean water and clean air. Healthy soil structure holds soil in place during heavy rains, allowing the water to soak in where it is needed. Alternatively, overworked dry soils lacking organic material take on hydrophobic qualities, repelling water, especially during intense rainfalls. These long drought periods, followed by intense rains, are becoming commonplace in Maine. These conditions lead to excess sediment, nutrients, fertilizers, and insecticides running off agricultural fields, which can end up in our surface waters, leading to algae blooms that suffocate fish and impair aquatic life. In the face of climate change, our main waters will not only face increasing algae blooms, but increasing occurrences of toxic cyanobacteria blooms. Ensuring healthy soils will ensure clean water. Micmac Farms does not utilize artificial pesticides or fertilizers, and instead chooses to build our soil structure and composition with applications of manure on an annual basis. This is a very costly expense to our farm. It is a slow process to rebuild soil when we cannot obtain enough organic material. We will look to the Healthy Soils program to build communications between farms, connecting farms in need of compost with farms and businesses with excess. Many of Maine's schools and restaurants are paying to dispose of food waste in landfills. Food material in landfills breaks down by anaerobic digestion, resulting in greenhouse gas emissions of methane and carbon dioxide. If the Healthy Soils program can make full circle connections by exploring composting on large scales and bring value to compost, the reduction of food waste to landfills will address greenhouse gas emissions and such issues that we face on our farm. So Healthy Soils also leads to clean air. By nourishing our soils, Micmac Farms can increase food access to our rural community who experience health disparities at higher rates than the rest of the state and country. Our community, farmers, and all Maine citizens will benefit from robust local food systems and a future with muted climate impacts by relieving the burden on fossil fuel-based transportation systems.
Can you finish up in a couple of sentences, please?
Yes, the Healthy Soils program will provide tools for farmers to resist crop stress and remain resilient to the multiple impacts we face from a changing climate, included projected increase from insect damage, plant disease, and intense weather events. Micmac Farms strongly supports LD 437 creations of the Healthy Soils program.
Thank you. Representative Pluker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you be available to work with the department in the future on trying to develop this program and how it would be best suited to your farm?
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the inclusion.
And then would you be able to give us some idea of how you've been impacted by the ACF policies in the past and how you would hope to address some of that in the future? If that's off the top of your head, or if it's not off the top of your head, then we can talk about it in workshop.
Sure. Give me time to put my thoughts together on that question.
I'd love to hear it. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next is Nanny Kennedy.
Hi, let me get my thing up. How are you? Sorry for the dogs if they're interrupting you. Good morning, Senator Dill and members of the Joint Committee on Ag and Forestry. Thank you, Senators Brenner and Maxim, Representatives Osher and Pluker. I'm speaking on behalf of the Maine Sustainable Agriculture Society. Healthy Soils, Farms, and Communities has been at the heart of what we do as an organization and how we do it as farmer members for almost 30 years. I am a rotational grazer of sheep and also a member of the NRCS State Technical Committee. Thank you very much for your collective work on this bill to date. As it stands, the bill has a great title, but we are not sure it does enough to actually connect the dots. Strategic climate mitigation action plans to draw down carbon dioxide and increase production capacity for practicing Maine farmers. The bill needs incentives and rewards established and itemized, not implied. Focus needs to be on creating reward systems for farmers and landowners, including forestry, based on actual carbon sequester service provided by their investment and sweat equity. This could be tied to production and tracked by resource-based income as reported on Schedule F. Definitions. 4, clarify wording. Greenhouse gas emissions benefits sounds like an oxymoron, could be greenhouse gas drawdown. 5, best practices. Add D, leverage use of biogenic methane to minimize purchased inputs to improved carbon sequestration through photosynthesis. Under the program, 2, responsibilities. A, sounds like establishing income streams for nonprofit organizations, not farmers, as practitioners implementing healthy soil strategies. There's plenty of information available already through ATRA, NRCS, et cetera, and on the internet. D, should be equitably distributed to all farmers, where distribution of benefits could be tied to production capacity and soil health delivery. For instance, establish a minimal subsidy per breeding animal unit wintered as it determines manure stockpiled and distributed as a critical soil health input. This is a strategy that has been successfully employed in the UK to affirm their animal agriculture industries as a central component of rural economic generator for all other industries, including tourism. E, wording is wishy-washy, needs teeth, should be determined in advance. Add F, restore the former nutrient management program reimagined as it pertains to the intent of this act and is proportional to services rendered. Would include direct service of carbon soils measurement, tracking, and organic matter. I would like to see this grow into a funding stream to match NRCS awards directly to the farmers for learning and doing the work to implement appropriate investment in their soil, water, and air resources. For anyone who does not know, NRCS awards are paid out to technical service providers and only cover a portion of the cost of the practice. The balance is a farmer out-of-pocket expense. This is the kind of program that has been utilized in California to keep good farmer stewards on working lands. Maine Healthy Soils Funds, establish an income tax form checkoff like the chickadee checkoff, so all Maine residents can opt into voluntary donation, knowing their funding will go directly to farmers as stewards doing the work to create greenhouse gas drawdown. This could be called the soil bank. Also, please consider eliminating the state income tax on resource-based income as reported on Schedule F. Agriculture is zero-basis manufacturing, where the farmer must invest in creating healthy soils through both land purchase or lease and sweat equity in a perfectly competitive marketplace that does not always recover production cost through product sales sufficient to justify the opportunity cost of maintaining said land in agricultural production. Such a program could be tied to NRCS award status or other healthy soil strategies implemented. This would be a direct benefit to reward farmers as practitioners for their service to the soil and working land preservation. Improving farm profitability is the highest priority of the AgCom strategic plan. Stewards of ag and forestry land spreading glyphosate could be eliminated from this privilege. Finally, this bill is an opportunity to consider as part of the program, an ag plastics aggregation and disposal program to remove plastic dumps on farms where they are counterintuitive to soil health and they are gross. If there were such a program where farmers took batched plastics to centralized locations, this would be an opportunity to provide the education services and peer-to-peer learning detailed in this act in a way that also benefited the farmers for their time and trucking and offer other face-to-face networking opportunities where we live in the age of Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. We are hoping some of these ideas details will be included and worked out in future work sessions. This bill deserves more farmer input. Thank you for hearing me out, and I'm happy to entertain questions.
Nanny, were you testifying neither for nor against?
That is absolutely correct. It's a great concept. We just think it needs a little bit of work to do the job that it's intended.
Right, thank you. And remember, if you're going to chat, it's anything of substance needs to be said on when you're on camera. The chat box is basically just for information like websites or something like that we will then use on our website later that people can access. Representative Ocean, did you have a question?
Thank you very much for that testimony. And I have the notes that you sent in advance, but it doesn't say the organization that you're representing. I just Googled you and found this Meadowcroft Farm.
That was a draft I sent last night. The Maine Sustainable Agriculture Society was started by former Commissioner Stu Smith.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your testimony. Would you be willing to talk about these in a little bit more detail and in either in a work session or at some other time?
Absolutely. I would love to. This is at the heart of what I've been doing for 40 years. Absolutely. And I will also give you an updated version of my testimony. Sorry about that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Seeing none, I believe I have two more people to speak, and that is Julianne Smith.
Thank you, and good morning, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and distinguished members of the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. My name is Julianne Smith, and I am the Executive Director of the Maine Farm Bureau Association, which is the state's largest farmer-run advocacy organization. We've represented the voice of all agriculture in Maine for 70 years, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to serve as the voice of our farmers today. Maine Farm Bureau's farmer members met to discuss this bill and voted to oppose the creation of the Maine Healthy Soils Program at the department. The University of Maine has an existing Healthy Soils program that has significantly and substantially benefited the farmers of Maine. Recreating an identical program within the department, rather than utilizing this vibrant existing resource, is an expensive and unnecessary redundancy. We deeply appreciate and agree with the need for continuing education, research, and development for the continued work around healthy soils. We firmly believe that this work belongs at our state's land-grant university rather than a regulatory agency. Having access to the science-based evidence that can be produced by university professors, researchers, and students will certainly benefit the farmers of Maine as well as the department. We have deep concerns that if the research was conducted by the department, it will quickly become regulation, much like what has already happened historically many times, but specifically in the 90s with the non-point source solution best management practices guide. What begins as a voluntary program can quickly change to become a mandate, which has the potential to disadvantage existing farms. Technological and research advances outpace the legislative and rulemaking process, so the appropriate place for a funded soil scientist expert is the University of Maine's Cooperative Extension. We encourage the committee to refocus any funding or research activities to cooperative extension and the department to work cooperatively with the university to distribute information and educational materials developed by cooperative extension. We urge you to either amend the bill to move the program to the University of Maine Cooperative Extension or vote ought not to pass on LD 437. I thank you for your time today and your service to the people of Maine, including our farmers, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I'll move on to our final person to testify. I believe we have on the list today, and that is John Harker.
Yeah, good morning, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the committee. My name is John Harker, and for those of you who don't know me, I currently operate an ornamental cranberry nursery and a pick-your-own-apple farm outside of Augusta. For 26 years, I was director for what I call farmer advocacy programs within the Maine Department of Agriculture before retirement in 2014. And prior to that, I was a colleague with Jim and ran the fruit research farms for the University of Maine. I'm not in favor of the bill as written. Again, I think as everybody else has said, this is it's very important that we focus on soil health going forward. My message is, do not start a new program. Instead, like Julianne Smith said, let's get back to basics and adequately fund the existing programs that support healthy soils, research, and education. If it is truly education and research that is needed, it's best placed at the University of Maine. I think that what we're seeing is a group of farmers and organizations who do not know of or understand all the existing resources that help farmers do a better job. Many of us had the benefit of university soil classes when getting our training as farmers, and we also know of and currently use university and extension and conservation district programs to help us do a better job. It's a sad commentary on our legislature, which gutted those programs over time, such that some of these new farmers do not have the type of access to the type of education resources we had in our generation. But with adequate funding, the soil and water conservation districts and extension could develop more expanded educational programs to target farmers who need soils education, because there's already much research and demonstration programs on soil health. How about just adequately funding those woefully underfunded offices and staff who farmers depend on? And as far as funding mechanisms, I'm going to make a suggestion to you. You do not need to establish a new funding program within the department to channel any of those federal funds or other funds that come through. You already have the Agricultural Development Fund that accepts funds from any source. That's Title VII, Section 307 and 308. I was the one who devised and put that program in place. And while at the department, that fund and other directed state and federal funds funded hundreds of thousands of dollars to the university and extension to conduct research and education on healthy soils practices. So you don't really need another fund. I think you could go through that program. And Jim, how much money and time did it take to get the cooperative extension disease and insect lab supported by the legislature and running better to support Maine farmers? That's a perfect example. And so rather than start a whole new program in the department, how about the legislature adequately fund the existing University Maine soil testing lab and add university extension staff to the existing extension soil health research and education program? I mean, in the 1980s, we had a number of soil research scientists working at the university until budget cuts. And now with the advent of the internet, all the Northeast University soils programs are well linked. They just need adequate funding and staffing to do their job better. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. So if this program is truly about research and educational outreach, then let's fund those existing traditional farmer support agencies and programs that are already set up to help educate and help farmers adopt new research findings for soil health. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions or come to any work sessions.
Are there any questions? Were you testifying neither for nor against, Mr. Harker?
I'm actually testifying against as written, but like Don Flannery said, I think there's things you can pull here. And as Julianne said, if you focused on going to the University of Maine rather than in the department, which is more regulatory, and just you can still have the federal and state funds come through the department and channeled over to the university, or the university could be funded directly by the legislature, and you could use the Ag Development Fund if any federal funds came in specifically for this type of program.
Okay, thank you. Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Harker, for your testimony. I heard in the department's testimony that it was important to put this in statute because some of the federal legislation that's being proposed is written that way. Can you comment on that? Can you explain why it needs to be in either or situation? And my last question is, or I'll follow up after that. I'll give you a chance to answer.
Sure. You know, the division I ran, which is the Division of Resource Development, that program is already set up to accept federal funds. We accepted all the federal irrigation funds that came down through, the specialty crop block grant funds. So that division already has the capability of moving funds through without establishing a new program per se. Also, the Ag Development Fund is the same way. It's already in place. If you had to do a small rule change to say you're going to accept funds for Maine healthy soils and then just channel it out through that grant program, it'd be very easy to do. You don't really need a whole nother separate program, separate funds, separate staffing. And the same thing with soil scientists. You know, that soil scientist was originally part of the Maine Soil and Water Conservation District program, and it was only through budget cuts that it ended up in the department. It really should be with the Maine Soil and Water Conservation Districts. But I agree with, I believe, what Julianne Smith said or Don Flannery said, that soil scientist position is desperately needed at the University of Maine to help channel research and extension information out to the farmers. And I think it's better placed there.
Do you have a follow-up, Representative O'Neill?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My follow-up question is, sorry, I'm losing it. I take notes for myself so that I can keep it all in my head. Let me look at what I wrote down. Do you think that that doing it in the way that you're talking about would demonstrate the strong partnership that the feds will be looking for?
I do, because again, all that is needed is a letter from the dean of the college and the commissioner of agriculture to the feds, talking about how they already collaborate, and Soil and Water Conservation District, NRCS. You could always just put a letter together to the feds stating exactly how you all cooperate and collaborate. And so that the feds know who does what and move forward. You really don't need a separate program to do that. I recognize, and I think it was either Heather or Maine Farmland Trust mentioned that there is this whole national group working towards trying to get all these kinds of laws placed in all the different states. And that's all well and good. And it's a very good intention to focus on soils, because I agree, we have not focused on them for a long time. But let's get back to the nuts and bolts of how farmers adopt change. And they adopt change through university programs and extension and research programs and on-farm demonstrations that are done by the university. And I think the feds would totally understand. And in fact, the feds actually fund those programs. So they would totally understand why those programs are more important to fund than a regulatory Department of Agriculture, other than to channel some funds through the department. Let me just say one more thing. When I first came to the department in the late 80s, I came to operate the Technology Transfer and Demonstration Program. And that program channeled state funds and federal funds out to do on-farm demonstrations. But I found over time that a lot of the funds were used by extension to help do on-farm demonstrations. And I got to questioning myself, why don't we just fund the university directly? And so that's why I say I don't think you need to reinvent the wheel.
And one more
Go ahead. Yep.
And maybe this is, I'm not expecting these answers to be conclusive now, because we heard quite a bit of different testimony from other folks today. So I think it'll continue to the work session. But one question I have for you is, how do we offer all of the farmers that have come to us today some stability for the future? Because some of the things that I've heard proposed today are more of a depend on executive action, which, as we know, can depend on the whims of an administration. So that's part of the benefit of the legislature taking action in this way. So I'm wondering if you can comment on that, and I want to open that up for the work session too.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, because you as a legislature have an opportunity to reprioritize programs that are being done in the Department of Agriculture to focus on the real needs of today. And I would absolutely agree that soil research and soil education is critical to new farmers and other farmers who don't have that historical understanding that we got through our agricultural training at universities and such. So, to answer your question, I think it's critical that you look at the current amount of money that's going to different types of programs and prioritize that money that's already in the network. So I could give you a number of examples. I won't today, but I can give you a number of examples of where you might want to try to refocus your efforts and rechannel money.
Thank you. I look forward to that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Representative Underwood.
Hi. Excellent presentation, Mr. Harker. Healthy soils and soil education. Isn't the extension, don't they do a lot of this already? And all I need is for someone to come in and ask about these different situations. And I'm sure the University of Maine can assist them with it.
Yes, the university absolutely does those programs right now. And you can just go to their website right now. They have a whole program on healthy soils. I think the issues for some of these young farmers and some of the current existing farmers that will want to go into new directions is they want to have better access to the research that's out there on some of these new soil practices. How do you get that? Well, thank goodness we have the internet today. I mean, I can go on now and I can find out from Cornell. Cornell has a soil testing service that includes soil biological health testing now. I could go there and, you can go around the whole United States to all the research facilities and get that information. It takes a lot of time and effort. The existing extension service, that's their job. And if you get more staff and funding there, they can move that research from Cornell into Maine and get it out to the farmers. And that's the whole purpose of extension. And that's what they do. So yes, they already have an existing program. They already have some staff. They need more funding and more staff. And then I think these current farmers who are having trouble, if they can get more education and training through extension, that's what they need. That's what they need.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Harker, for your testimony. That appears to be the last one for LD 437. So I will close the hearing on this bill, and we'll move on to LD 324, an act to limit public land ownership in Maine. So we'll open that up. And let's see, Representative Javna. There she is. I see her name popped up in the bottom. Hi, Representative. How you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm doing well, Senator Dill. Thank you. You guys have had quite the morning already.
Yes.
Would you like me to just proceed?
Please, start right in.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and esteemed members of the Agricultural Conservation and Forestry Committee. I am Representative Kathy Javner of District 141, introducing LD 324, an act to limit public land ownership in Maine. This bill seeks to strike a balance of land ownership. Land is our greatest natural resource and our greatest commodity. This bill seeks to limit publicly owned land in the state to no more than 33% of the total land area and 50% of the land area in any county. The bill also allows the state or a municipality to exceed the limits with the approval of 2/3 of the state legislature. Yes, I have had conversations with those who are not so favorable to this bill. They were great conversations. That is one of my absolute favorite aspects of being an elected official, listening. The theme of these conversations, whether for or against the bill, was the love of the land. As we all know, land can be very unifying or very divisive. And when it comes to land use, well, we've all had those conversations too. Again, I want to stress that this bill seeks on every level to strike a balance and allows us all to begin to formulate a compromise. One that no, not everyone will be satisfied with, but one that will perhaps continue the conversation of compromise as we seek to be the best caretakers of our land as possible. The second piece of this bill asks for a biannual report from the department concerning the percentage of federal and state property ownership statewide and by county. I searched for such a report and was not able to discover one, although I've heard that one does exist. If one does exist, we'd love for it to be made easily available for research. And if one doesn't, we would ask that the department be directed to compile the data in a report to the committee on a biannual basis. Thank you very much for your time and commitment to the future of our state. And I apologize, I caught briefly the briefing that you guys were hearing this morning. And I see that, they have also encouraged conversation and making wise decisions. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony and introducing the bill. Are there any questions? Again, thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on to Representative Stanley.
Good morning. I really don't have testimony prepared. I'm just here to support this bill.
All right, thank you. We appreciate that. Next will be Andy Cutco from Department of Agriculture.
Good morning again, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the committee. Nice to see you again. I'm Andy Cutco, and I'm the Director of the Maine Bureau of Parks and Lands. Speaking on behalf of the department today in opposition to LD 324. The proposed legislation is problematic for a number of reasons, but before expanding on those reasons, I want to provide some context on public lands in Maine. Maine state parks and public lands account for roughly 700,000 acres in Maine, and state wildlife management areas managed by IF&W account for another 100,000 or so acres. Together with federal and municipal owned lands, these public lands are a vital part of Maine's interwoven recreation, forest products, and tourism economies. They form the backbone of a growing outdoor recreation economy, which contributes 40,000 direct jobs and $548 million in state and local tax revenue. Maine state parks, which, as you know, set an all-time attendance record last year, generate an estimated $100 million in economic benefits to the state. In addition to supporting the state's recreation economy, Maine's public lands produce more than 100,000 cords of wood each year, sustaining jobs in forestry, logging, trucking, and wood products. The department opposes the bill on several grounds. First, state parks and public lands directly support municipalities. Through Title 12, MRSA 1820, 1840, and 1854, the legislature has provided for various mechanisms of revenue sharing with local entities. In addition to the many values of public land ownership, thousands of acres of publicly held working forest conservation easements in Maine perpetuate private ownership and forest productivity while providing wildlife habitat and allowing for public recreation. Second, the definition of publicly owned land is exceptionally broad in this bill. As currently worded, an accounting of public land ownership would appear to include highways, roads, ball fields, sidewalks, and military ownerships. Accordingly, this broad interpretation could result in unintended consequences. With the inclusion of municipal and federal lands, this bill, for example, could conceivably require legislative approval for a wide variety of worthwhile purposes. A town, for example, could need legislative approval to purchase a softball field, expand an elementary school, or purchase land for a maintenance shed. And the state could need legislative approval to purchase land to widen a state road. It's also not clear whether Maine law could actually prohibit the federal land from purchasing land in Maine. Third, whenever the state acquires land, there are processes in place to ensure that stakeholders are engaged, impacts are explored, and the use of resources is weighed. We believe it's a better policy to allow future acquisitions to be evaluated in this way on their merits, rather than to impose an arbitrary cap on the amount of public land the state can own, irrespective of possible public good. Finally, the proposed legislation also runs counter to the spirit and intent of the long-established Land for Maine's Future program and to the more recent land conservation goal created by the Maine Climate Council that you heard about this morning. In summary, the legislation is unnecessary, difficult to interpret and apply, and misaligned with long-standing Maine values. Thanks for your time, and I'd be glad to answer any questions either now or at the work session.
Are there any questions? Representative Schofield.
Thank you, Chairman Dill. Good morning again, Director Cutco. I'm glad to see you again. I'm just thinking, let's suppose hypothetically that there was a beautiful pond or oceanfront property that the state of Maine wanted to develop into a state park. It had all the attributes for some place that folks would really enjoy, and it's significant and all the good reasons. But the town in which that property was located in was vehemently against it. I mean, you have all kinds of people calling you and complaining that we don't want it here. What, in your view, would be the response of the Bureau or the department? Just curious what you might think about that. Your comments?
Well, thank you, Representative Schofield. It's a good question. I fortunately didn't hear a specific example there, so I don't know that I have that task on my plate in the near future. I guess what I would say is I believe land conservation has really evolved in the last several decades to where we all the conservation that happens is done under the premise of a willing seller, willing buyer approach, and so. Speaking on behalf of the Bureau, at least, I would not see a situation where the Bureau would come in heavy-handed and by eminent domain or any other means, force a state park upon a local town that didn't want it. I think what we would do is work with the municipality to try to find out what the opposition was, and what the interest was on behalf of the local people and the people of Maine, and if there was a way to work together to satisfy those recreational interests and land protection in a way that was collaborative with the town as opposed to the state working against the town.
Thank you, Director. I suspected that would be the response, and I appreciate hearing it. Thank you.
Representative Gifford. You're muted.
Okay, how's that?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right, thank you. Sorry about that. Commissioner, the representative asked earlier about a map. When I was on AIG before, we were presented a map of state-owned and publicly owned land. So I think those are probably available. Am I not correct?
Yes, I'll just elaborate a little bit on my testimony. The state has fairly good data on conserved lands. So that is areas that are public lands, state parks, under large working forest conservation easements. Where we lack data is particularly on the municipal end for land that are not conservation uses of towns. So a town elementary school property or a ball field or state roads or state highways. There are, publicly owned properties that are used for other purposes rather than conservation. It's possible that that data is out there within DOT or Maine Municipal Association, but that is not data that we have in our department. So our information is pretty good on conserved lands, but that doesn't cover the wide variety of public lands as defined in this bill.
Okay, one follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Can we get a copy of that for workshop?
Sure. What I can provide is there are maps of public land and state parks that are available on the website, and I can certainly provide the links of those. And I can provide a spreadsheet that I've asked folks to create that talks about the acreage of conserved land or conservation lands within each county. So I can provide that for the work session.
Okay, that would be very helpful. One more question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Public land versus privately owned land. Do you have the ratio of people pay taxes on personal property tax? I mean, personal tax on privately owned land. Do you have a figure on that versus, you talked about 100,000 cord of wood being cut off in public lands, but do you have a cost ratio, private plus public owned versus public owned?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can answer the specific question. What I can tell you is that in the testimony, I referenced 3 different statutes that cover revenue sharing from the state to towns. And I know that last year from our public lands, we shared over $255,000 to municipalities. And from our state parks through revenue sharing, there was over $425,000 shared to municipalities through the various mechanisms.
Okay, thank you.
And that doesn't include, the economic benefit of state parks to communities or the economic impact of the 100,000 cords of wood that have been harvested.
Thank you for the information.
Are there any other questions for the director? All right, seeing none, the next 3 folks to testify are Eliza Townsend, Jeffrey Romano, and Melanie Stern. Go ahead, Eliza, you're up first, and I see you down in the corner. Please unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Darn it. Good morning, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. I am Eliza Townsend. I'm the Maine Conservation Policy Director for the Appalachian Mountain Club. Founded in 1876, AMC is the nation's oldest conservation, recreation, and education organization, with the mission to foster the protection, enjoyment, and understanding of the outdoors. We have 6,500 members in Maine and own 75,000 acres of forest land in the 100-mile wilderness region of Piscataquis County, which we manage for multiple use, including sustainable forestry, backcountry recreation, and environmental education. We are enthusiastic supporters of public land ownership, and for that reason, we oppose LD 324. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic drew people outside in record numbers. Maine's state parks welcomed a record 3 million visitors, and camping reservations for 2021 are already up from last year. Maine Trail Finder saw a 125% increase in traffic as people searched for destinations. Retailers saw increased demand for outdoor equipment, whether tents, bicycles, skis, boats, ATVs, or snowmobiles. LL Bean saw a 400% increase in sales of snowshoes and sleds. The Outdoor Industry Foundation reports that record numbers of Americans engaged in hiking, fishing, and camping. In short, millions of people discovered the physical, mental, and social benefits of being outdoors. At times, the pressures on parks, trails, and preserves has become too much, resulting in closures at just the moment when fresh air, heat relief, exercise, and peace of mind were what Mainers needed most. It's clear that we need more places to refresh our minds, bodies, and spirits, and not fewer. Further, public lands contribute significant economic value. Visits to Acadia National Park generated $380 million in spending in 2019, while visits to state parks were found to contribute $100 million to the Maine economy, and that study was 15 years ago. That spending benefits rural Maine, where the majority of the parks are located. In addition, Maine is experiencing a real estate boom as people seek a safer place to live and a higher quality of life. Numerous new residents told the Bangor Daily News that they chose Maine in part for easy access to outdoor activities. Public lands are not just about recreation, however. The lands covered by LD 324 include not only national, state, and municipal parks, but also national forests, national wildlife refuges, and state public reserved lands. Collectively, they all provide vital ecological services, cleaning our air and water, holding floodwaters, sequestering carbon, and providing plant and wildlife habitat. While, however, we think of Maine as a place where access to the outdoors is easy and central to our identity, we do not all have the same access to nature's benefits. Low-income communities, especially communities of color, are far less likely to have access to close-to-home parks and trails, and to the fresh air, clean water, and air-cooling shade that trees provide. If we want a healthy and thriving populace, we need to ensure that every Mainer has the same access. Public land has a role to play. In sum, public lands strengthen communities, improve our quality of life, clean our air and water, and contribute to our economy. During the pandemic, Mainers and visitors have come to appreciate them as never before. We urge you to vote ought not to pass.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, next is Jeffrey Romano.
Hi, Senator Dill. I just wanted to make sure I'm testifying in opposition.
Yeah, that's where we are. There's no one else in favor, so. Yeah,
Okay.
So we're in opposition.
Okay, great. Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. My name is Jeff Romano. I appreciate this opportunity to provide testimony on behalf of Maine Coast Heritage Trust in opposition to LD 324. There are many reasons to oppose this bill, but the most compelling is that it proposes a redundant level of government oversight that already exists in current laws and regulations. The primary tool the state uses to increase public land ownership is the Land for Maine's Future program, funded with general obligation bonds since 1987, Much like the mechanisms outlined in LD 324, LMF funds already require 2/3 support of both legislative bodies. Our existing law goes beyond this bill by requiring Maine voters to ratify the bond of the ballot box. When it comes to approving specific projects, LMF statutory authority adds additional layers. Current law states, quote, approval by the elected municipal officials is required when more than 1% of a municipality's state valuation is considered for acquisition under a bond issue. The LMF board also notifies all municipalities prior to approving the acquisition of any properties, providing ample opportunity for local officials to voice concerns should they choose to. To the contrary, the typical LMF project today enjoys active participation, financial support, and backing from municipal officials, community groups, and local businesses. LD 324 also uses a problematic and misleading definition of public lands that Director Cutco described earlier. Keep in mind, Maine has very little public land, roughly 7% of the state. For comparison, more than 20% of neighboring New Hampshire is public conservation land. In fact, despite progress over the past 2 decades, Maine has the lowest percentage of public land of any New England state. Often critics of conservation raise questions of property taxes. This committee examined the subject a few years ago and discovered that nearly 95% of land trust conserved lands remain on the tax rolls. In addition, all federal lands in Maine make payments in lieu of taxes. The Maine Bureau of Parks and Lands also shares revenue. In the end, very few acres of conserved land in Maine are tax exempt. Instead, most conservation landowners in Maine financially support local governments at a similar level or higher as private forest landowners do on the more than 10 million acres that have been enrolled under the Maine tree growth tax law. In the end, LD 324 asks the question, how much conservation is enough? While we agree with the bill's sponsor that this should be decided by the public, Maine public already has that ability through existing laws. There's little doubt where Maine people stand on the issue today. When asked most recently about whether the state should fund the LMF program, nearly 60% of Maine voters said yes. Based on the record numbers of Maine people who visited conservation land over the past year, this level of support is likely much higher today. We encourage the committee to vote ought to pass on this legislation. Let's focus on ways to expand and enhance access to Maine's outdoors rather than devote time on a bill in search of a problem. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Representative McRae. You're muted, sir.
Trying to be quick. I think in the very end, Mr. Romano, you said vote in support of this legislation, and you testified.
If I did, I misspoke. I apologize. I encourage you to vote against this legislation. I apologize.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Before I ask you to speak, Melanie, evidently I have a Mr. Reisman, and he said he had signed up to speak in favor of the bill, and I had him as neither for nor against, so therefore he would have been after you. But since normally we do go in that other order, I will ask him to speak now before you. So, Mr. Reisman, you're on.
Thank you. Senator Deal, Representative O'Neill, members of the committee. My name is John Reisman. I'm a resident of Cooper, a former first selectman, and an associate professor of economics and public policy at the University of Maine at Machias, where I have taught environmental policy and economics since 1984. I worked for the King administration on environmental and education policy in the 90s. My testimony today in support of LD 324 reflects my professional and political experience and expertise, but I speak for myself, not the university. I want to thank Representative Javner and the co-sponsors for agreeing to sponsor this bill. In the 1990s, Maine adopted a goal of increasing state public land ownership to 10%, or about 2 million acres. I believe that aggressive funding of the Land for Maine Futures program over the last 20 years has accomplished this goal, although I have not seen any well-publicized accountings. In recent years, especially because of our still developing climate change policy, state and national goals of 20 to 30% have been suggested. In 1999, I conducted an analysis of state land ownership, which you should have, and proposed purchases on a county basis. This analysis found that the vast majority of state public lands in Maine were concentrated in the 2nd Congressional District, specifically Piscataquis, Aroostook, Somerset, Oxford, Penobscot, Washington, Hancock, and Franklin counties. The majority of proposed and since then actual acquisitions were also in those counties. My analysis did not include federal and municipal land ownership. My analysis argued that the greatest need for public lands and the benefits they would confer was in 6 southern Maine counties that were below the state median in both percentage of the county in public ownership and public acres per capita: Cumberland, Waldo, York, Kennebec, Androscoggin, and Lincoln. LD 324 seeks to cap federal, state, and local public land ownership at 33%, with no more than 50% in any given county, with a 2/3 legislative cap override options. The reasons are as follows. The United States uses a capitalist economic system, which means that resources, including land, are generally owned and controlled by private parties, not the state. The 33% statewide and 50% county cap reflect that. The benefits of public ownership, recreation, conservation, and carbon sequestration are subject to diminishing returns and should be distributed equitably across the state. The costs of public ownership, a diminished tax base, and reduced development opportunities are subject to increasing costs and should also be distributed equitably across Maine. The establishment of state and county caps, along with a legislative override option, will lower the temperature of any upcoming debates on raising the statewide goal or potential expansions of Katahdin Woods and Waters, Acadia National Park, or other public lands in Maine. Thank you for taking my testimony, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Reisman, and sorry about the confusion. Are there any questions for Mr. Reisman? All right, seeing none, again, thank you for your testimony, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Melanie.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the committee. I'm Melanie Sturm, the Forest and Wildlife Director at the Natural Resources Council of Maine, and I'm providing testimony in opposition to LD 324. NRCM opposes this bill for a number of reasons. First and foremost, this bill seeks to solve a problem that does not exist. The processes by which the state acquires land or easements are well designed and deliberate, ensuring extensive engagement and support from municipalities, state agencies, and community organizations. For example, the Land for Maine's Future program and the Federal Forest Legacy program are 2 of the primary ways that Maine state agencies acquire land to advance the interests of Maine people. Both of these funding programs require a willing seller in order for the land to be considered, and both have an advisory board made up of state agency staff, dedicated professionals, and citizens. Both have competitive processes that rank applications for funding based on carefully crafted review measures, and all applications must meet certain criteria. In sum, we have in place effective systems for the methodical review of land acquisition opportunities by multiple parties, ensuring that new public land has broad-based support. As such, we believe this bill is unnecessary. Further, we are concerned that the bill would infringe on private property rights. The bill would arbitrarily limit the amount of publicly owned land and will require a 2/3 vote by the legislature to exceed those limits. Private landowners should be able to make decisions and set goals for their property without having to go to the legislature, which they would need to do if they wanted to sell or donate their land or an easement to the state if their property exceeds the threshold set in LD 324. For some private property landowners to have to get approval from the legislature for decisions made about their property, while other landowners who made similar decisions before them did not, would be unfair and create a needlessly onerous burden and violation of private property rights. The bill would also impose legislative restrictions on municipalities for similar reasons. The arbitrary limits set by LD 324 would include all types of public land, not just state ownership, such as plots of land for playgrounds, ball fields, and picnic areas like Director Cutco described. Fundamentally, we strongly believe that public lands provide significant economic, environmental, and public health benefits, which I go to in my written testimony. A bill to limit public land ownership ignores these contributions and undervalues how public lands and access to them have been especially important to Mainers during the pandemic. In summary, legislation should focus on remedying problems, not creating them. With LD 324, we do not see a problem this bill would solve. The process for acquiring state property and easements is well functioning. Creating new barriers for private landowners and municipalities to pursue their land management goals would be an unnecessary burden. Public lands provide a variety of benefits, including economic opportunities. Setting an arbitrary limit on public lands does not make sense. We respectfully urge the committee to vote ought not to pass on LD 324. Thank you for your time and consideration. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. The next two speakers we have are Rebecca Graham and Stuart Kellgren. So with that, Rebecca.
Thank you, Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. My name is Rebecca Graham, and I'm presenting testimony neither for nor against LD 324 for MMA at the direction of our 70-member Legislative Policy Committee. Municipal officials value the effort that has created the spaces for public enjoyment in the outdoors in many towns and cities. These properties often have high value for their scenic views and natural resources that often once belonged to a single individual. In many cases, the pursuit of public lands protects important historic recreation areas for communities that could be threatened by development or even workforce access to waterways. Additionally, the use of public ownership of lands is going to be even a greater tool as part of the climate initiatives that are rolling out. For many coastal and inland waterway communities, to address the increased flooding and coastal inundation, to allow them to possibly leverage future funding assistance for managed retreat to get their businesses and residents in those areas out of harm. That said, the public lands process is broader than just the state process. And sometimes it leaves struggling rural communities underwater fiscally as it removes significant revenue off the tax rolls and shifts the burden onto an aging population that's often on fixed incomes who lack the ability to shoulder that. The goals of this legislation are laudable, responding to that inequity that does exist amongst communities, and provides an opportunity for this committee to actually explore the ways that you could address that property tax burden that really kind of lies at the heart of all of the land use programs existing. While some nonprofit land preservation entities work well with communities and continue to make payments in lieu of taxes, or use a current use program that provides at least some revenue, others take full advantage of their complete exemption. And sometimes the purchases of those lands happens off the radar of that community. It could be between a private owner and a nonprofit. Some communities are heavily involved in the process and fully accept that burden, while others have limited involvement because of that. So as drafted, the 50% county threshold would leave some communities in jeopardy without a tool to move their residents out of the way from harm, or simply strip them of the ability to promote a locally desired economic development center around the use of public land. So rather than limiting the amount of land that can be set aside for public use, officials asked the committee to consider using this bill to address some of the problems within the current system and some options or mechanisms to ensure that future lands set aside for the purpose provide a tangible and equal benefit for the loss of the revenue to those communities, and at least involve those communities directly in all of those processes. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
The last one I have on my list to testify is Stuart Kellgren, and I have him as testifying either for or against also. Please unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and please let us know if you're for or against at the beginning.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I'm for the bill, LD 324. Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the committee. The purchase of land by the government is not the answer to our public land use issues. In fact, it's a very slippery slope if we allow the government to purchase more land. I worked for Great Northern Paper Company for 43 years. During that time period, I've witnessed the environmental zealots try to take control of land that employed thousands of people, especially in northern Maine. In the 80s, they stopped the Dickey Lincoln Dam project. Then when Great Northern Paper Company wanted to build a dam on the Penobscot River known as the Big A Dam Project, environmental groups such as the Nature Conservancy, the Appalachian Mountain Club, along with the State of Maine Land Use Regulations Commission.
Excuse me, Mr. Calgren, please keep it on focus here and let's not disparage other groups for their beliefs.
All right, it's all right, I'm just.
Yep, no, I hear you, but thank you.
They signed for intervenor status and application to build the dam, okay? In the end, Great Northern could have built the project. The outcome was what we see today. Great Northern Paper Company is gone along with thousands of jobs. I'm not against the state owning land for public use to a point. However, I've witnessed what happens when the government gets involved with land ownership. I own over 100 acres and I'm a small business owner. When these environmental groups come in, it's not controlled by the state anymore. It's controlled by the money and the power that these agendas get put through. And they've infiltrated the state of Maine. Conservation easements are another way that they've gained hold in Maine. And many of them are in perpetuity. That's forever. The residents of Maine are widely spread out, and this is a two-main issue. When the government takes over land, especially in northern Maine, it has a tremendous effect on taxes. I urge you to pass LD 324 to protect the private ownership of land in Maine and put a cap on government ownership. Thank you. I'll take any questions you have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Calgren? All right, seeing none. Thank you for your testimony, sir. I have no one else left to testify on this bill, so I will close the hearing on LD 457, and we'll go right into our last bill, which is LD 457, an act to provide free state park passes to persons with disabilities. And to present the bill is Representative Cuddy. Who I see just appeared on my screen.
Just like magic, sir.
It was. Speak your name and there you are.
Right? This is the second time I've testified, but yet that feeling, that moment when your Zoom shuts off completely and then it comes back on, there is a little bit of that, what's happening here? All right. But thank you guys very much. I know you've already had a couple of very long hearings. Looking at the testimony list, this one looks like it might be shorter for you. But so Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Agricultural Conservation and Forestry. My name is Scott Cuddy, and I live in Winterport. I represent House District 98, which is comprised of Frankfort, Searsport, Swanville, and Winterport. And I'm here today to speak in favor of my bill, LD 457, an act to provide free state park passes to persons with disabilities. This idea was brought to me by a constituent who is disabled and wished to spend time at state parks during the pandemic. His financial situation made that impossible for him, and he contacted me asking if there was something that could be done about it. And he particularly was interested in free parks for members of the disabled community. It made total sense to me on a sort of common sense level. Nationally, looking into it, you can actually get a free national park pass as a member of the disabled community. And anybody who's in the vehicle with the person can actually come into the national park for free. In my testimony, I've included the ways that a person can establish disability on a national level, but I'm not intending to read through that. Looking around the country, there are a number of states that allow for a discounted pass, but I didn't find any others that allowed for a free state park pass. And I really believe that the passage of this bill is a simple way to improve recreational opportunities for everybody who has a disability in the state of Maine, a recognized disability in the state of Maine. And I would appreciate your support for the bill and welcome any questions, of course. I do want to add that I am also very sensitive to the idea that parks are funded by the monies that are received as a fee. And that anything that jeopardizes the park's ability to do their own maintenance is a serious issue. When I put the bill in, free made a lot of sense to me. Having looked around the country to see what other people are doing and to see the ways that they have done it, that would make Maine the only state doing that. So I am certainly open to different ways to do this. My goal, I guess I should state, is just that I want to make it more possible for folks who have a disability to enjoy the state parks. And this is a way to do that. So I appreciate your time very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Representative Cuddy? Representative Landry.
Thank you, Representative Cuddy. Would your bill propose that all members of a vehicle in which a disabled person was in would be eligible for free admission?
Yeah, the ways that I understand the park passes to work, I've purchased park passes in the past, and it's a vehicle pass. So when I purchase the pass and I come in, my kids and my mom, we all go together. Everybody gets in for free. So that was the thinking. And by the way, excellent first name. I love it.
You got it. Thank you.
Representative Bernard.
Thank you very much. Representative Cuddy, does that mean that you would be open to considering a discount rather than free pass so that we would more line up with other states in the nation?
Absolutely. Yeah, I certainly would.
Are there other questions?
But additionally, Representative Bernard, also the funding, for parks themselves coming from that, while I would love to be able to provide free passes, I think having done more research, cloture comes up when it comes up, and you have to get the bill in. And then having done more research afterward, I really started to wonder if this is something that we could actually afford to do as a free pass. But so for that reason as well, I would welcome the idea of amending.
Representative Schofield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if you can hear me or not. My battery's getting low, so we'll see if this works. I was wondering if Representative Cuddy realized, could he explain to us how many of the free use is already being done in state parks? There are a number of entities, I believe, that are getting into parks for little or no fee. Does he realize that? And if so, could he expound on that, please?
I do realize that there are some folks who are able to get into state parks for free. I don't, it's a while ago since I looked at the statute. My recollection was there were only a couple, although I believe somebody from the department will be here who could explain that better. I do realize that there are some groups getting free access, though, already.
Are there any other questions for Representative Cuddy? Seeing none, thank you for introducing the bill and testifying this morning. I will move over to the department and Ron Hunt.
Thank you, Senator Dill. Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, and honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. My name is Ron Hunt, and I'm the Director of Operations and Maintenance in the Bureau of Parks and Lands. I am speaking neither for nor against LD 457, an act to provide free state park passes to persons with disabilities, on behalf of the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. The department recognizes the positive intent of the bill regarding Maine's disabled population. Accordingly, the department currently allows veterans with 100% disability-free day use and camping in Maine state parks. Other groups receiving free day use include senior citizens, 65 plus, children under 5, veterans, and active duty military personnel. In all, the Bureau estimates that more than 1/3 of state park users receive free entry. The department also recognizes the physical and emotional benefits of all of the outdoors for all Maine citizens, including those with disabilities. In 2020, Maine State Parks welcomed more than 3 million visits from the public, which was a record. Many of those using our state parks were seeking the relaxation and family connection time characteristic of outdoor activities in Maine. Maine State Parks have continually worked to improve the accessibility of facilities at Maine State Parks and historic sites, and last year's 3 million visits included many of those with disabilities. In reviewing the proposed legislation, I encourage the committee to consider the fiscal impact of this bill. Revenues from Maine State Park entrance fees are returned to the state's general fund. According to the Maine Bureau of Veteran Services and the Maine Bureau of Motor Vehicle Secretary of State's office, there are over 175 individuals with permanent disabilities in Maine. The fiscal impact of lost revenue to the general fund would depend on whether the free entry replaced day passes or season passes, but either way, it would be substantial. I should also note that the Bureau currently lacks sufficient resources to address the growing backlog of infrastructure maintenance, repairs, and capital upgrades needed in state parks. In summary, the department recognizes the admirable intent behind LD 457 and supports the use of our state parks by Maine's disabled population. At the same time, the department wants to ensure that the committee considers the very substantial fiscal impact of this bill. I'm ready to answer any questions now or at the work sessions. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Schofield.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt, for being here. Could you give us an insight into what the Bureau has done over the last decade or two or more regarding access and handicap, transforming our parks so that folks who do have disabilities can enjoy them?
Since the implementation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and that was back in 1995, all capital reconstruction of facilities has included provisions for disabled use. It's part of the statute. So all of the bathhouses and improvements to parking lots and facilities that have been capital in nature have also included barrier-free, ADA compliant construction. In addition to that, many years ago, we went into all of our existing facilities, and as best we could, we also converted many facilities to become as compliant as they could be made to meet that act provision. We have had few capital monies in the last 10 years because we haven't had any bond issues that have addressed that. And that's the primary source of our funding, which is also coupled with LWCF federal funding. It's a 50-50 match for capital construction. But whenever we do capital improvements, ADA access is a component of all of those projects and will continue to be in the future should we receive any capital monies.
Thank you for your response. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Are there other questions? Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ron, could you, I know it doesn't directly affect your revenue because, you know, your revenue you get goes to the general fund, but for the work session, could you give us an estimate, cost estimate of the backlog of maintenance and repair and capital improvements that need to be done to the state parks to bring them up to code or accessibility?
I can give you a rough estimate right now. It's over $50 million worth of capital improvement backlog that has been generated, and those figures are dated on an engineering survey in 2004, so they're somewhat out of date. But at that point in time, it was $40 million, and with the increase in cost of construction materials, et cetera, we estimate it to be $50 million.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you all for your testimonies today. And I will close the hearing on LD 457, an act to provide free state park passes to persons with disabilities. Karen and Cheryl, are anything else to come before us today?
Yes.
Cheryl, is there anything? Go ahead, Karen.
I do have a quick language review I'd like to run by the committee. I emailed it to you during the public hearing, but I can share my screen. It's it's pretty straightforward. Let me share my screen. So sure. This is the committee amendment. Do you all see it?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So this is the committee amendment to LD 207, the resolve regarding legislative review of Chapter 1 fee schedule for the Land Use Planning Commission. It's a major substantive rule resolve. So the committee voted in support of finally adopting this rule. The only thing, the reason why there is an amendment is that LUPC had requested that there be sort of a different effective date. So that's, I just added to section 1, notwithstanding Title V Administrative Procedures Act, which sets the timeline. The Maine Land Use Planning Commission shall finally adopt rules no later than October 1st, 2021. We did hear them say that they were working on other chapter rules that were routine technical, and they sort of wanted all the timing of all these changes to kind of happen, to go into effect at the same time. So that's what this amendment is.
And we voted actually on that, didn't we, Karen?
Yes, it's just,
Yep.
This is just language review.
Yep. Thank you. Anything else?
Tomorrow, there's just a reminder, there's a joint public hearing with appropriations and the ACF committee at 1 p.m. I did check in with the committee clerk for appropriations, and she said that you should all be receiving a Zoom invite for that public hearing around 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Okay. So do look for that if you do plan to join.
Right. And that's kind of one of those things they kind of, it is a joint hearing, so they do kind of expect us to be there. But so if you at all can make it tomorrow, that would be great. It's a good show from our standpoint. We get to ask questions also on the budget. Before we actually have our budget review ourselves within committee. So if you can all make it, it would be appreciated. Anything else, Karen?
And just a reminder, I know that the chairs have been getting emails with various reports, and some of them are not being sent to the whole committee, but I am posting everything on the ACF committee webpage, and there's a link for reports. Like we recently got a report on the Allagash Wilderness Waterway. We just got a Land for Maine Future Program report this morning, which has been posted on the web. So I encourage you to, visit that regularly just to kind of see what the committee's been receiving, because you're not getting hard copies these days.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anything else anybody has? Seeing nothing, can I have a motion to adjourn? Made by Representative Landry, seconded by Representative Osher. All in favor? None opposed. Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.
You too.